Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, it's not gonna be a video where in the last while, the videos I've done have consisted of me looking at right-wing people who are wrong or have made bad arguments, or people who are on, or at least supposedly on the left, who have also made some terrible points. And I don't mean terrible as in badly argued or badly made. I mean like actually terrible points. I'm not sure if you could tell it's terrible. Anyway, the point is, this isn't quite that. It is still looking at bad stuff, but it's looking at bad stuff through the view of somebody who isn't doing those things. So let's begin this reaction video of Sam Collins. Let's go ahead.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel.
I will say, the whole face thing in the camera is very...
We have a Jubilee video,
off-putting.
and it is trans conservatives versus liberals. So I'm on my PC. This is a very long video. It's an hour and 25 minutes. So we're just going to take specific cuts, talk about it, and I'm going to give my own opinions. I haven't seen this video at all yet. Personally, I know Sasha. Claps for Sasha. Yeah, good job. I know we did a good job. And I also know who Blair White is, and I disagree with her most of the time, but I'm going to go unbiased because she does say things sometimes that do make sense. I say that generously, okay? Don't drag me yet, because we're just going to see what these people have to say.
Being a non-binary person that sometimes has a choice of either going to a men's restroom looking like this. You can look at me.
It's just interesting. I thought this was a trans debate. That was what I thought.
Yeah.
Non-binary people fall under the trans umbrella. So I don't know, maybe you can educate yourself a little bit on that.
I think I could
then you would figure out, you know, what reality is.
I fucking love Sasha.
I mean, I just love the idea of somebody who's a little right winger who whose buddy friends, at least colleagues, would gladly murder them. Just gladly murder them. It's a very interesting scenario where you're like, I'll educate you. By the way, if you don't know, my friends, they would kill me if they had the chance, if they were able to get away with it, and then I wasn't of any use to them anymore. That's right. It's like, oh, okay, that's kind of sad. Like, you have like no actual friends. Like, you've no real friends. They're all fake. You know? Like, if you have no friends, that's not a problem. But, like, at least, if you have no friends, you will be aware of it in most cases. But for the rest, it's just sad because, like, all of their friends they're just all fake. But they're all fake in a really kind of, like, not in like they baden out you when you're not in the room kind of way. They're like, yeah, no, we'd kill them if they were no longer any use to you because you're just an asset to them. That's really sad.
Shit.
It is a safety concern for trans women to share a female restroom.
I'm going to say no. We're just going to base it off of no.
Yeah, it's not really. And if you say it is, then it's just in general the existence of people needing to use the restroom just is,
There's a bunch of million other things that they're going to connect into here.
It's not necessarily saying that trans women, it all comes down to self-ID. When we moved into a self-ID process, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of men, just simply self-IDing and to being trans women to utilize the female restroom and to harm women.
Yeah. Proof. Also, was that the case? The question would have to be asked, Well, the way I remember when I was learning about I remember doing some research for a book I was writing, and it was basically just doing some research on different prison sentences. And one of the things it came across was that for raping or assaulting somebody, you tend to get a lot more years than being in a place you're not supposed to be in. Because in those cases, you can always argue, well, I didn't intend to be there. Now, if you're an idiot, like a YouTube live stream, and you record yourself intentionally going in there, that's where your entire defense will collapse. But if you don't have that, then you can always say, well, no, like because it is possible you can make a mistake there. So it's more likely actually the person will simply just not do that because well that would be foolish,
No. If there was that happening enough, there would be statistics. There would be a graph to actually show that. If men want to harm women,
I will say the argument would be that you're saying things would lead to something, not necessarily saying it is that this is happening on a regular basis. Now, to be clear, some people are saying that. They are wrong. But the people who are saying, no, it's not happening right now, but it will lead to this happening, that refutes the point of statistics, but it still wouldn't make any sense and still wouldn't really mean anything. Like, okay, so You ban it, and then they just attack you anyway. Okay, that solved no problems at all.
They're going to do so regardless. They're not going to go through an entire process of
Yeah.
transitioning or putting on a wig and a dress to enter the women's restroom to
That's one. Yeah.
attempt to harm somebody in the restroom. Yes, maybe it has happened this many times in the whole wide world. We don't know. But if somebody wants to harm someone, at the end of the day, they're going to do it by not dressing up as a woman. I think that is an extremely weak argument.
They're getting arousal from just being there.
You know, there's a photo or there's a video.
Sorry, what? They get from just being there. Yeah, I feel like that's still gonna occur if they're there or not. But anyway, just yeah, that's a bit of a weird one to say. I hope Jubilee clipped that out of context, because if that wasn't out of context, that's a like a weird claim to make, you know. Anyway.
That went viral, I think, like just 2 weeks ago, with some like whole man with a boner in the women's restroom, and there's just some poor.
Interestingly, how do you determine that from a photograph? It is generally relatively easy to tell in person, but from photographs, it's actually hard to tell. One of the interesting things with biology is that human piss can do this. If piss is at high pressure, it can cause, as water can. Cause things to lift. Like if you've ever seen something that isn't going to be instantly dissolvable with water, water can lift it into the air. You know, so it can do that with a penis as well. Did you know that the human piss can do that? Because that's the thing that can occur. So how do you know what the raised penis is? You know, just a question for you. That is a medical thing that occurs. Now, obviously, it doesn't occur every single time someone is urinating, but the point is, it does occur in some people. So,
For a woman filming it, like, am I just supposed to like accept that this is here? So I think there's levels to it. I think that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that you haven't really, it's just it could just be piss.
Women who are actually trans, we're talking gender dysphoria, transitions, making the effort, probably once you reach a certain point in your transition where you can actually assimilate within that space and not cause a disruptance, that would probably be the ideal time to start doing that, right? Whereas,
Okay, agreed with Blair White. I think for safety reasons, you should go into the restroom where you look like, just so you don't get beat up or just so people aren't attacking you. I don't even know what.
The argument, though, is if you still have this sort of thing around trans people, then you will have this issue of people will be, similar to when you have this sort of like overvigilance against, so people get attacked. And this happens all the time. This happens with all sorts of phobias. Like it happens with Islamophobia. It happens with all like people who are anti-Jewish. All these things where they will attack someone, and it's like, well, this person was in this group. So what do you mean it was transphobic? What do you mean it was homophobic? It's like, well, they thought that this person was gay, or they thought this person was Muslim. Yes, they know they weren't, but the intention was to beat up somebody like this. So it doesn't necessarily make you safe, because, okay, but then you'd have to deliberately try and look like the thing that you're matching. So if you have semi-transitioned, okay, so you're going to have to basically temporarily, not obviously physically, but visually detransition almost when you get into the sort of position there. Surely, you're in that uncomfortable position there, aren't you? That you are kind of going to reach a problem where either situation is not going to be great because of transphobia. That and even people who aren't trans, who just are, who just look a particular way, don't match the gender stereotype in a visual way, will face that. So that's not really the best there. Yeah, I don't really necessarily agree with that now, because there's issues. Although maybe there's lots of issues with that though as well. Yeah, is my point.
What video they're referencing, and this is another reason why I don't like Jubilee, because there's a lot of false information. There was a video.
Yeah, I'm just saying, even if there was a video, that the medical stuff when it comes to it is potentially inaccurate. So
actually arose on the internet where a cis woman who looked trans, or somebody thought she was trans, was being harassed for being in a women's restroom because the other person thought.
That is a key factor as well. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so back to the video.
she was trans. I hear about those people all the time, wondering what other genitals people have in bathrooms because they're so concerned about trans people, but they're just attacking cis people because they think that they're trans, because we've created this narrative of what trans looks like.
We're saying the same thing.
There's different reasons people are trans, and some people really are trans because they're horny, and some people are trans because they really felt that way from, you know, a young age or whatever.
Sorry, what?
Are there people trans because they're horny? I'm not educated enough about the trans fetishization, but I know there are people out there who fetishize trans people. I don't know if they go to the extent to transition into being trans. Maybe there are, but I thought that was a very interesting point.
Don't really think that. That's certainly...
In government-run and government-funded buildings, there should always be a third space for us.
Is HelloFresh worth the price?
Sake.
Absolutely.
Don't buy
I just love the idea of having my...
That private property owners can make the rules for their establishment and figure out how to enforce
Don't you just love Americans? They're just so full of shit.
those rules. We're in a state right now where you have to allow anybody to use whatever restroom they want.
If you're a decent human being, you do what causes the least disturbance. So, for example, I filmed a YouTube.
Okay, very simple. I always like to use the family restroom just because every other restroom is fucking disgusting. Not that I go into the women's restroom, but public restrooms are disgusting. I try to avoid them at all costs. If you're living in a state where you don't like the laws there, and they really bother you, you know, bathroom laws specifically, you can go to Arkansas. You can go to Arkansas.
Well, no, just move is not really an argument because, like, okay, do you think the majority of Americans have the money to? I'm sure Blair does, but, you know, most people don't.
Try it. It's a lot cheaper. If you're in California, like, I don't know why you're living in California. If, like, you just, I don't fucking, why would you want to live here?
I mean, yeah, that's fair enough, except if your job is dependent there, you know.
The disagreeers, please step forward.
I want to comment on Blair's point. The one thing I kept hearing through all of the nuance is passability. Because ultimately, when we talk about passability, it determines how you get harassed in the bathroom. Because honestly, if you don't look so passable or whatnot, people are going to say, oh, that's a man with a dress on, and then there's going to be discourse. But the reality of it is, honestly, who cares who's trans and who's cis going in the bathroom? You should be minding your own business, being able to pee and do your business in peace. Conversation around this man with a boner on or whatever, like.
That's also a good point, because sometimes no matter how far you are into your transition, you might not pass. I feel like the bathroom thing has just been such a gigantic issue when there's a lot of other things to focus on. Like, all right, you see someone who is trying to look like a woman or a man.
To be fair, that is a main focus of politicians. So, you know,
and they're just going into the stall and they're doing whatever and they're getting out. It does not take that long. It's really not that big of an issue. I feel like people are worrying way too much about it. And like I said, there's not enough statistics or enough cases of pedophiles dressing up as women or men to attack people in the bathroom. They're just going to do it anyways without dressing up.
I saw that picture and I thought to myself, that's really a right-wing talking point and conservative propaganda.
Oh, doesn't look very happy.
Because that's their ideology.
I will say Jubilee has a bad history of just, you know, doing the same sort of thing that like the BBC has done and a lot of media has done over the years, which is the whole thing of let's listen to both sides, and it's like one side doesn't even believe what they're saying, they're lying. But one thing that you have is just the cutting to people can be savage, just like. It's like, I think that, you know, it's wrong to force children who are trans to just force them into puberty and not allow them to take hormone blockers. And it's like,
I'm speaking. That's their ideology when it comes to trans. It's because conservatives have a basic level understanding of what transness is in the first place. And with all due respect, I do not think any of you are basic, but they use you as the baseline to amplifying this propaganda.
How is it propaganda if it's a thing that really happened and was caught on video? Like,
okay, we're gonna look at the boner thing. We have to do it.
I would rather not, but hopefully you'll self-censor. But anyway. You know, that's not really...
So I've tried to find more context on this video, but it is literally a 5-second video of whether or not it is a trans woman or actually a man dressed as a woman with a boner in the female toilets, where I cannot find any other information on it. It is a super short video. I don't know if it was something for right-wingers to use for a talking point, like someone could have staged that. There's no other information. That person didn't get arrested, they haven't been identified or anything like that, which is very interesting because that is sexual harassment. That's all we have on that video. That's a very weak argument that you're bringing to the table to share about bathrooms. Let's say it is real then, okay? We'll give it the benefit of the doubt. That would be weird, yes, and that should not be allowed at all. Regarding my previous point, if this was something that was happening so often, it would be a statistic, but it is not. It is not a statistic. I cannot find a singular graph where it shows men dressing as women to harass women in the women's restroom. I feel like that is
not really good.
It was an actual occurrence. It wasn't staged.
There's zero evidence of the follow-ups regarding this 5-second video that Blair is mentioning. I believe that it is stage bait in order for extremists to have a...
It happened, and that's not the only. It's not an isolated incident.
But that's not enough for me to say because actors can do that. Who knows? They could have been an actor trying to make a point against trans people. Passability politics is really a thing in our trans community, especially when we come to the debate of restrooms.
Well, you can say it's politics, but actually it's just real life, right? It's just about
Correct.
where you're able
Oh, it's just
to assimilate to and where you're not. And I think one of the biggest problems in the trans community is the community by and large has seemed to reject assimilation and seems hell-bent on...
That's not true.
I think it's absolutely true. You see people talking about how you don't...
Well, that's your opinion, I guess, unfortunately.
Need to work on your transition at all to enter women's restrooms, and I think that is so selfish.
That drives me crazy.
It's so disregarding
Selfish indeed.
of women who may or may not feel
But the
uncomfortable.
trans woman experience is not monolithic. So who?
Right, but you do realize, right? Some people will feel uncomfortable if you're a minority or even a majority, and it's because if someone, a white person, may very well feel uncomfortable if someone comes into the bathroom. Of course, the reason they feel uncomfortable is because they're just a tiny little bit of a racist. Do you understand? So just because someone's uncomfortable doesn't make their uncomfortableness okay. If it's, based in, fear because of prior experiences, that depends. But if it's based off of their, predetermined, feelings around that particular group or their perception of that particular group, then yeah, that's not really valid though as a fear, is it?
Who are we to police transness? Why are we policing other people's trans and how they show up?
We have to
But why
protect women.
Why are y'all policing though? That's what I don't understand.
But you're using words that we're not
policing.
using. It's not policing. We're listening to
policing.
women, and if you have 50%, we won't say 50%, but if you have a large chunk of the population of women,
Well, I'm not sure if that's especially a great point. What are you? Okay, sorry, just
not using. It's not policing. We're listening to women, and if you have 50%, we won't say 50%, but if you have a large chunk of the population of women saying that they are uncomfortable with a certain thing, a good person leans in and listens.
So why
they
are
don't
you
just
not listening
reject
to
it.
other trans women, Blair?
I
think
do
that's-
all day,
Okay,
right
so,
now.
But you said one side, and that's great. But what about the side of trans women? If we're not bringing both sides into this conversation,
yeah. Also, I don't really like if 90% of women were like, oh, I don't feel very comfortable when someone of language that tap, when and then they say a slur, comes in, that I don't feel. It's like, oh. You're racist, yeah. That doesn't make it legitimate, though. You may well have fear, and you do have fear. It's true. Some people are racist in a different fashion. They're like suppressive. They're they see themselves as that they should be the person holding the whip. Other people are actually, honestly, they do feel fear. They feel fear for invalid reasons, but they do feel fear. It's still racism, but it's a slightly different type of racism, and it's a key thing you should understand, which is that doesn't make it okay. It's slightly different, but it doesn't make
But I would say that
it's
okay.
unbalanced.
Here's what I would say then, because I do understand both sides. I'm almost a decade into my transition, which means I was one time a year in, 6 months in, 2 months in. So I understand that, but I also
Do you though? Do you understand the situation that people go through, or do you understand the internal journey you go through? And even then, you still wouldn't really understand the overall internal journey for everyone, because you understand your own internal journey. That's different, for everyone. Well, not for everyone, but there's many different
knew
ways.
at the very beginning of my transition that if I'm not at a place physically where I'm not making people feel uncomfortable, or I'm making people uncomfortable, then
Right.
that's on me. That's my
Correct.
responsibility to make sure that I'm going places a certain way to make sure that they're comfortable.
Because it's for
It
your
was my
safety
respons-
also, too, right?
Well,
Would you also say
can,
that you're safe?
Well,
You're
I
safe.
know
It does depend, though, on what you're doing, though, doesn't it?
that
plays a part.
you seem to be looking at through the lens of always trans being the priority. I'm looking at through the lens of women being the priority.
Okay, I get both sides here.
Right, but sorry, what?
Like, they actually do both make sense. Some people don't want to assimilate into society. Some people want to abolish gender as a whole, and whatever, like, give your own personal opinion and stuff like that, but that's kind of how it's been. Men, women. I tried my hardest as
I
well.
will say there's a certain subsection of people who want to abolish gender who are, in a sense, transphobic almost in a way, because they're like, oh, this is the way society is now, this is the way I think we should have society. Trans people are neither. So they then go, no, which isn't the greatest, sort of thing there. But anyway, that's just a little key thing there you might want to be aware of. Not some of the people within this, just a little factor involved. You should be aware of.
To assimilate into society because I want to be viewed as a man. I want to use the man's restroom. I want to do whatever man, all that stuff. So I worked my hardest, and it becomes really difficult when, let's just say, I never did any of that stuff, but I'm still identifying as a trans man, and it's hard for me to pass. That's when shit becomes difficult, right? Because what if I did still look feminine, or people still misgender me on a regular basis? That would be, it's just ingrained into us from a young age. It's a difficult conversation, and I get both sides because at the same time, things don't have to be so black and white. But also, we are in those times where they sort of are. We are moving forward, but it doesn't move forward that fast. So me assimilating into society the way that I am and the way that I wanted to is just what I ended up doing with my transition. And hopefully others can. It's hard for some people to pass.
There's plenty of situations.
Why? I just want to know
because
why
it's them who would fall
that.
victim to not actual trans women, as I said, but people posing as trans women. People who are
But trans women are also victims of that as well.
I think the middle ground, though, is, and I feel like I'm not coming at this from an extreme place. I feel like an extreme place would be like no trans women in the bathroom ever. That's the extreme position. I'm saying work on your transition, take it as your responsibility, and be respectful. And that's the middle ground, right?
This is a self-preservation issue, right? So if somebody's in the bathroom and they have a boner, that looks bad on all of us. And when people, and when our community's not
Once again, though, there is the whole idea of well, how do you know if they're showing it off? Yeah, that's just straight up a crime. If they're not, however, then how do you know what it is?
calling that out and not saying that this is
But
wrong.
how many? I'm just
No,
to
I
your
get
point.
it.
How many cases has that occurred?
It happens a lot. We see it. It's happening all the time.
No, I
There
have
are-
to see.
there are-
I have to
there are
see
Twitter
data.
accounts.
Sorry, because I just want to make the
Yeah, I think I see a lot of different points from everybody here. Honestly, like I can understand like
Right. They were gonna say something about a Twitter account.
how some women may feel unsafe with men in the restroom.
that would
Men.
be-
When I say men, I mean men. I'm not talking about trans women. So being a non-binary person that sometimes has the choice of either going to a men's restroom looking like this. You can look at me, looking like
It's
this.
just interesting. I thought this was a trans debate. That's what I thought.
Oh.
Non-binary.
And
Why are people
find
Really?
trans umbrella.
No, they don't.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you can educate yourself a little bit
I
on
think
that,
I think
and
I'd
maybe
educate
then
you.
you figure
I think I'd
out,
educate
you know,
you,
what
right?
the reality is.
I'm
and
sure
what
there's
trans actually
a
means.
non.
Oh my fucking god.
Well, because it's not a debate about who is really trans and who is not.
It can be.
We're talking about restrooms as a trans non-binary person.
Well, no. It could be, yes, but then it wouldn't be. Is it a safety concern for trans women to share a female restroom? It wouldn't be a discussion about that, would it? It would be a different discussion. And seeing how the way it's structured, you'd have to ask them to add that on, which would be.
When I go into a place that only has men's and women's restrooms, and I'm dressed like this, my choice to go into the men's restroom at that point puts me in danger.
6 years ago, when I've transitioned almost 8 years ago, but 6 years ago, it was never an issue for me to use the women's room. Girls would literally drag me in there with them and say, girl, you need to be in our bathroom. And I was like, I felt uncomfortable back then. I don't pass. I know I don't pass, so that's a me problem.
Do you not? I'm pretty sure you do, though. Actually,
And I'm not going to turn my fear of being attacked in the men's room into a woman's problem.
But do you see how that
pretty sure you do. Actually, I mean,
was not an issue 6 years ago?
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
You see how it
Pretty sure you do. Fuck's sake! The fucking sorry. It's just YouTube. Seriously.
of all of the fear mongering and all that stuff that people do with trans people and how political they have made it. They have made us look so disgusting, especially trans women. It's never talked about in trans men's bathrooms. I feel like we're so fucking long on this topic, but see how it was not an issue back then, but now it is because of all of the little things that they like to use. They like to use their little pawns to push their terrible, false ideologies into the world, to fear monger people, and that controls people, that controls sets of people. So essentially, they're just controlling you by fear, by saying like, hey, there's trans women are men, and they're just going in there to R-word your daughters. And that makes people scared. And then they're like, all right, well, fuck trans people.
This discussion about trans women being in the restroom also affects biological women because guess what? Biological women come in all shapes and sizes. There are, a lot of lesbian women that deal with this issue that I've related with and empathize because we both get pulled out of the restroom and thrown and guys try to beat us up because we're in a restroom with women.
Sorry,
and then on top of it, and empathize because all shapes and sizes. There are, a lot of lesbian women that deal with this issue that I've related with and empathize because we both get pulled out of the restroom and thrown and guys try to beat us up because we're in a restroom with women. And then on top of it, to add that layer that it's not even being discussed.
That's just a fucking weird thing to do. Actually, that's just.
In any mainstream, that this is just completely wiped out and that you're standing up for women, but you're not standing up for women children. You're not standing up for biological females that are children. You're only standing up for what really affects you. And it's kind of sad that the idea that passability is you need to work on your transition. A lot of folks, especially in our community, have no access to finances, resources, jobs to even get their foot in the door to get access to hormones. So you're putting all of these barriers just for them to be able to go to the restroom, which is a natural thing that we all have to do. So what do I need to do? Piss outside? Because that's how I was treated my entire childhood.
I would. I just feel like when this whole topic comes up, like obviously.
Damn, that's crazy. Yeah, I could see I could definitely see like lesbians getting kicked out of women's restrooms too and shit.
It goes back to like there's dudes like jerking off in the bathroom, and like to me like when I hear that I'm like okay, like but that's not trans women. So when we talk about this conversation, and it seems like the fear is like literally cisgender straight men who are being creeps, and what sucks is cis straight men can be like creepy, and then it's like trans women, trans men are like paying the price for that, and I feel like. You know what, that's what's really hard about it is because then I think people get the idea, or some people have the belief trans women are just like, they're just men in dresses, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, for so many trans women...
One thing I have a problem with, though, is like, okay, but what if you got the cis man who's being creepy, but is able to successfully pass? They're not trans, they're cis. If they're able to successfully pass, you don't know about that. You know? Do you think that maybe that might be like an honest to goodness thing that makes no sense? Like, okay, but how will you know? How can you know the person is, you know, like, how are you able to even know what they are? Like, that's, you know, without being deeply...
And so many trans men, the safest place for them is the bathroom that aligns with their gender. And if you go to a place where it's illegal to do that, or you have to go and like, what's your ID or like your birth certificate, it puts you in an objectively unsafe situation. And for me, like I'm like, if I walk in the women's room, I mean, I know I like look like I look 12, but like I feel like someone would be like, get out of here, you know what I mean? But like that's the vibe. Like I think you got to remember like when we're talking about it, and we're talking about like these creepy dudes like in the bathroom.
Here's the middle ground. Here's the middle ground. Y'all ready? We're gonna be.
Don't really think a conservative fascist is the person who can do a middle ground, but anyway.
So happy with this. This is the middle ground. We all actually agree. It's men that are the problem. Yep. It's not trans women, real trans women. However, the problem is our community has really eroded any barriers to actually being trans in the sense of your average crossdresser can identify as a trans woman.
But then it's not a trans woman.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. I feel that way as well. I agree with you wholeheartedly. However, with the state of the political correctness within the trans community, you can't really say that. Like that person
is this person saying
their self-ID.
Well, no. Like, if I say to you, I'm a cis man, then it would be it wouldn't be inaccurate to then say, oh, you're not, you know what I mean? Like it's that wouldn't, you know, like that's why that wouldn't make much sense. It's kind of
they say that they're trans.
I actually do agree with you, Blair, 100%. Because that's one of those things. Yeah, I told you, I'm really like that.
I'm just gonna say it for the millionth time. It's just how often is that happening? And
yeah.
On the very, very rare occasions that it does happen, yes, it definitely does make trans people look bad, but those aren't trans people at the end of the day. Those are cis men. Using that, that's where like self-ID does become an issue.
They would require to identify as trans first, you know? You know...
Like what they're talking about.
I support the transgender military ban.
I think that oftentimes...
Very odd, by the way. Very odd. You know... At least if you were transphobic, you come with the argument of, well, you would be, you know, if you were saying, oh no, you're not this, and then saying, well, and as that's the case, this group is not allowed. But you know, both men and women are allowed in the military, so it's like okay. So I don't really see, even if you were the most transphobic person, and you didn't believe someone, you're like, no, you're not, you're not. Okay, then it reverts back to the opposite gender, or you know, and then like I don't really see where does it become a problem? Where is the problem?
When you talk about trans people in the military, people forget that most places, if we're talking about feet on the ground and really going into war zones, are really dangerous for trans people, and so it's.
I do want to question this. You are aware the American military kills people abroad. They murder people abroad. I feel like the most dangerous thing for a trans person abroad wouldn't be the society they're in, because the society they're in is also the society they're shooting at, you know? So really, it's like if you were in, for example, when America was in Afghanistan, I feel like the Taliban aren't going to kill you, the US soldier, because you're trans. It's because you're a US soldier. You know, that's going to be the main thing, you know, guys? That's going to be the main factor that's going to get you hurt or killed. It's not going to be the fact that you're trans. It's going to be the fact that you're a soldier in a foreign territory. You know, that's what's going to happen. It is insane to me, this stupid to take, because, first of all, you have guns. You are the person with all the military power, and also you have the not the moral right, but the legal right in the eyes of your country to murder people. So if you wanted to, and someone was assaulting you, you could shoot them. And when I say assaulting, I don't mean full on rape. I mean they were like going to beat you up. You could literally shoot them to the face and go, well, they tried to attack a US soldier. So, boom, problem solved. No need to ever bring in the fact that they were attacking you for being trans, because they were attacking you, US soldier. Boom, problem solved. Like, it just, to me, it makes no sense, because it's not dangerous to be trans in a military situation any more than it is in a general situation, except if your military has a problem with actively killing their fellow trans soldiers. That would be the only situation in which it would be more dangerous, where the military is actively killing their brethren. That's literally the only situation, because you're in a war zone, or you're in an area that will become a war zone. You're gonna make it a war zone. You're gonna be targeted because you're a US soldier, not because you're trans. This is fucking stupid. It's like, wow.
Really an extra risk.
You're talking about the culture that exists over there.
The Middle East, it's like that's not exactly trans-friendly. It's actually the opposite.
Yes.
The medications that we take sometimes put us in conflict with being able to actually be combat ready. But there is some nuance here.
Once again, American soldiers are not known for being too well at being combat ready. The only issue, as I've discussed before, an idiot with a machine gun is still a very dangerous idiot. Like, if I fire a machine gun at you and I miss 99% of the time, but I also did fire thousands of rounds at you, you still have many bullets inside you. I missed most of the time, but you still have many bullets inside you. You realise? So overpowering someone means that even if they're not very efficient, not very good at their job, the fact is you've given them so much power that they can just do it anyway. That it's not as efficient and all that, but it's just, having thousands of rounds of ammunition, you have to kill one person, boom, problem solved. You don't even need to be that great of a shot, because boom, you just there.
Here, obviously, like if there was a trans cook or a trans medic, I'm not exactly going to be upset, but for the most part, when it comes to combat,
I hate supporting, like what you just said. I hate supporting it because it goes to the narrative of the should athletes compete in sports, but
trans athletes.
Yeah, the drugs we take do weaken us, so we're not like.
But the thing is, okay, but you're taking estrogen, and your estrogen levels are going to be
but even by the way, even beyond the whole front line, the front line is just, to me, such an insane thing, because it's not going to be more dangerous, really, in realistic terms. You're a US soldier. Most people hate the US. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Most people either hate you or else, like, they do not like your military. They find your military very odd, and they're willing to let it go ahead and, do whatever it's like in other countries, as long as you're not hurting their country. But they, it's more of a sort of like, well, it's not my country, so, But, so, even on the front line, it wouldn't make much sense, because it's not more dangerous, really, in real terms. As many people who before the ban said, and people who, were maybe trans but hadn't come out, have said, which is, it's actually better, because you have less of this sort of transphobia in the field, because, you don't have this social conservatism that's pushed as much. It's a different kind of conservatism, where it's sort of like, very militaristic, and, this is sort of a different sort of vibe to it. And that's a very interesting thing. So even beyond the front line, even on the front line, doesn't even apply. So, I'm not also behind the front line,
of a biological woman and vice versa for trans men.
I'm back ready, but we're also not as physically strong as the guy counterparts standing right next to us.
And I will say, like, as a person with HIV, I was diagnosed today.
Yeah, but that would also be true, though. It's also the interesting thing, like, when I remember, you'd see, there were multiple people who were, when I do races, mixed races, there would be people who there would be people who were like there'd be guys who'd be slower than all the women. Just all of them. Every single one. And that's the thing that occurs. So even if you're trans, where you are is just, it's this sort of weird thing where, it's just like your place on a hierarchy is just it's very odd. This sort of thing of viewing trans women and men. It's just very odd.
At 18, I couldn't go into the military, because I couldn't get Victor B overseas.
Yeah, so I will say, as probably the only person that served in the military on this entire panel.
You should speak first.
It's okay. The thing about it is, I think there is a lot of nuance in this. I actually have friends that are currently serving in the military. I think there was a lot of misrepresentation of what the trans ban actually did. You have soldiers, if you have surgeries, they go on profile, which means they can't actually do their job. They can't do PT. If you have bottom surgery, it takes a year. And so as a leader, that person's filling a position of a job of somebody that should be doing it. I don't mind somebody who is actually on.
I do wonder about the American relationship with jobs in the military is very odd. The sort of thing of, we need to recruit. Why do you need to recruit people from the military? I understand the idea of having a standing army. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand it. It makes sense. If you're a military, you want to have people who you're ready to call upon. But I don't get people when they have actual recruitment drives where it's like, join the army. Like, actually, this will be your job. How do you still need people? Seriously, how? You don't have any direct enemies. America.
Hormones going there, because there's a lot of people. People take PTSD medications overseas. They actually take 6 months of medication with them. So
to be fair, now, arguably Ukraine now is with Russia's technically speaking, arguably an enemy now. But yeah, besides that. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily support, because I think that everybody in the military, as long as you can do your job, you can go in there and nobody really cares. But it is those times when, if you can't perform your job, that becomes an issue.
Okay, but we could also say the same thing about other surgeries that people have that aren't SRS. What happens then when they have to go for 6 months, etc.?
And also, it would be insane to go, oh, every single person who has ever needed to have surgery is banned. Okay. When I was 14, I had my toe was slightly twisted. I had to go in and get that repaired. So I'm not allowed to do this job anymore. Yeah. Cause that if you were in the military, that surgery would have harmed your performance. Right. But the whole thing of even taking up a spot, like, okay, but just have more spots. The Americans are constantly looking for new people to sign up, so it's not really a thing of spots. Like, you just no.
I think it's very discriminatory to keep trans people out of the military. We pay our bills here. We pay our taxes here. We are Americans. We deserve to serve this.
I find Americans to be very odd. This sort of thing, like, that's a very odd thing. We deserve the right to be murdered for this nation. This nation has the right to send us off and be killed by some people who are doing violence in another country. We deserve the right to be killed for. Why are we there? Who the fuck knows? We're certainly not doing it to help anyone but ourselves. But not ourselves, not like individual soldiers. I mean, like, ourselves in the country. And technically speaking, not in the country, but like the corporations. Interestingly, for all the resources that America gets access to, a good chunk of them the U.S. government doesn't get access to. It's just U.S. companies get access to. It's very odd, the sort of thing. Like, oh, the U.S. government just spent billions on this and they got nothing out of it, but this U.S. company did. Is that not basically giving that company billions in free aid? Like, you fought a war so that company could get natural resources? That's fucking wild, man.
As well. However, you all did raise some great points about the concern and safety of trans people. And I do agree that something does need to be done about that to protect us. Who's protecting us in the military? Who is?
I mean, if you're even diagnosed with like mild social anxiety, you're not eligible to enter the military. If you have like a crooked left, pinky toe, you're not eligible. So discriminatory, I mean, that word sounds pretty in today's climate very much like, oh no, discrimination, but it's not always bad. Sometimes it's for the safety, and it's like, when it comes to the military.
I can't go into the military at all. They're fucking. I probably have like 10 different things that I can, and being trans can be one of them too. Sure, fuck it.
it is important to protect all trans people in the military.
Well, we can't waste
And so what is the best
resources
way to protect them
protecting
is
them.
not turning them in the Middle East with Muslims. They're going to kill them.
Well, I just want to interject your point.
Once again, Blair, buddy, they're going to kill them because they're US soldiers, not because they're trans. I feel like the Taliban, ISIS, and all of these very far-right groups would generally go, trans people are probably below on their list of people to murder. US soldiers are probably very high up there, seeing as US soldiers can actually do something to stop them. You know, they can kill them, Blair. They can kill them. They have the ability to kill them. You know, so I feel like if you were a member of one of these groups, you would probably kill that person not for being trans, but for being a US soldier. Once again, that's going to be the main danger of being in the Middle East if you're a US soldier. You know, the fact that you are a US soldier, not the fact that you're trans, for fuck's sake. Also, how the fuck are they going to find that out? Just a weird thing to have. Like, how are they going to know? You know, in general, you know, military gear does tend to hide most things. People are not generally wearing the medical history they have on their thing, just in case. I mean, technically speaking, they are wearing probably medical contact details, but although who knows. But the point is, it's just insane to me that someone would say this because it makes very little sense. Like, where? What? Why? Just
Point about suicide. So as somebody who has worked in community service with community members directly, a lot of their suicide issues actually revolve around access to finances. And the military is one of the highest employers of transgender people. So we actually see the suicide rate drop. And for me
That's a good
personally,
point, but it's one of the highest employers of anybody.
But if you're suicidal and you go into a job that has a high likelihood of PTSD, causing PTSD and all these other issues, then it becomes a big issue because then you already have one mental illness, and then you're compounding it with more.
And when you're
sorry,
on...
what? What was that? Sorry, should we just put that back there for a second?
Of anybody.
But if you're suicidal and you go into a job that has a high likelihood of PTSD, causing PTSD and all these
Oh
other
yeah. To be clear, yeah, the military isn't good. I'm just saying that, you know.
issues, then it becomes a big issue because then you already have one mental illness, and then you're compounding it with more.
And when you're on...
Sorry, what's the one mental illness?
You know, a very strict
You didn't
regimen
finish
of,
his
you know,
point,
if you're
but-
trans,
What's the one mental...
and if you're really trans, and we can get into who's really trans later. And when you're on, you know, a very strict
You didn't
regimen
finish
of,
his
you know,
point,
if you're
but
trans
okay.
and if you're really trans, and we can get into who's really trans later because I'm
Yeah,
going
I
to say
wanna
about
know
that.
what
But
you're talking
if
about
you're going
that.
to be on hormones, right, you're not always going to have access to those drugs when you're deployed and when you're in the situations.
How do you know that? Because medical
they
care
don't have
is
those kind of
covered in the
pharmacies in the Middle
medical
East.
care is covered in the military, so they should have access to that. So that is false information.
and also you guys are forgetting
Right,
the fact, well,
but-
hold on. You guys have all forgotten the fact of what is the flip side for these
It's also very weird to go, you know, our healthcare system is shit. So really, that's why you deserve to die. Because it's bad. Wait, what? You deserve to die because it's bad. Okay, I understand it will lead to death, you know, the whole thing of the fact that the healthcare system is bad. But here's a suggestion: how about you improve it? You see, sometimes when you have a policy, you can reject a policy and then say, instead of supporting that policy, I support this policy. It's an alternative. You know, so the alternative, if the person who's trans isn't able to get access to those drugs, the alternative would be, well, how about you just make it so that they can. Imagine that. Imagine if you did that instead, because that would be, you know, different and also the sensible conclusion.
transgender individuals that are signing up for the military and they're taken out, and that was their life plan. Where are they supposed to work and where's their employment supposed to be?
No,
Because
I
the
agree.
mental illness that
I
happens
agree, it's
through
horrible.
homelessness and the lack of resources
I agree,
that
it's
come.
horrible.
So that is also
They
the flip
actually-
side of that. So if folks
but they
don't have,
didn't take
hold
it
on
down.
one second, but if they don't have access to a job that could offer them support and research and access to medication, access to benefits, lifetime benefit.
And at the end of the military has amazing benefits for you if you're in it, and if you're trans and your shit is covered, then that's absolutely amazing too.
Yeah, but that's because the military has so much fucking money.
I think that's what the point you're trying to get
And
across.
it's just like, how do we even spend this? It's like the whole. I believe it's a English joke. The whole thing of, oh no. What happens is each individual ministry or each individual department tries to go for as much money as possible, and then goes, oh, okay, and how will we spend it now? You know, like. that's what appears to be what the military just does. It's like, okay, give us more money. We'd like more money. And it's like, okay, how will we spend it now? Let's order a new jet for a couple of $100 million. Boom, there we are. Okay, new jet for a couple of $100 million for one individual jet. We will probably only use a few times, because if we lose it, it'll be a fucking disaster. Now, there we are. Healthcare.
That's something that most transgender people in any sector of any
So do you
job.
want an answer to your question, or are you just going to round? Because I can answer. You said, what about those people that were kicked out? If you're kicked out and it once was the norm for you to participate in the military, that's sad. But at the same time, if that is what is determined for the ultimate safety and effectiveness of the military, nothing should come before that.
Blair, have you ever worked?
Wow, Blair, you're such a... I mean, I didn't want to say this, but such a fucking idiot. Like, Jesus Christ.
Second bomb, because the second bomb.
Have you ever worked directly?
I am right now.
No,
We're
directly
surrounded by
in
them.
services in terms of nonprofits and actually getting clientele.
She's not
That's my
grassroots.
entire
She
career.
is not a grassroots
Not
person,
grassroots.
because truth be told, a lot of our
What does that even
community
mean?
is in grassroots.
Have you ever had a
Nonprofit
client list of
organizations that are
transgender people that
trans-led.
you
Hold on
actually
just a
took care
second.
of?
Hold on just a second.
Took care of them, what, like paid their bills? No,
I'm
I don't
sorry,
Offering them
excuse me.
services, getting them through
I've helped a lot of trans people in my life,
Trans-led
yes.
organizations that are ran by trans people. I really want to see what you've done for those organizations, because I don't see any of y'all on the front line.
I've dedicated my entire life to, in my own way, and you can disagree with that because we all have our vehicle.
Yes, in your own way of making life worse for every single trans person.
And our methods towards
Absolutely.
No,
promoting
well, not
trans-
every single kind of, to be fair. Just America, probably the UK, good chunk of Europe. But besides that, other people hadn't heard the fuck about you. Like, no one has, so, you know.
and the ultimate progression of the quality of life of trans people. I've dedicated my entire life to that. Right? I access millions of people every single month on all my social media.
Blair, but your videos, as a former Blair White fan years and years and years ago, I'm talking like 6 years ago, you make fun of trans people on your channel.
Yeah.
That's not
You
giving
lie about them as well. So.
Information, you're just kind of like, you don't really pass, so you're fuck you, he, him, ha, ha. Like, that's kind of all you do on your channel, essentially. Aside from some of the things that you do well very, very rarely, which is pointing out, there was this time where she was actually making content about like pedophiles and stuff like that, where she actually had some decent points. But I've watched plenty of Blair White to know that she lies through her videos, through her TV, an insane amount. She lied on a political compass test to make herself look more conservative than she actually is, by the way, if any of you do watch her. There's a whole thing about that. Really, go look at it on Reddit. Go look at it on Reddit. I don't want to talk about it, but she did that too. The whole Janae Marie Kroc thing. That's when I made a video about her. She completely lied about the entire thing. Didn't even really apologize for it. She continuously lies about other trans people and shits on them if they don't look the way that she wants them to look, because apparently she thinks she is the trans goddess who can determine who is trans and who isn't trans and what trans should look like. I guess that's what she thought her job was. That's all she does for content, essentially, is make fun of people. From what I've picked up, I used to be a big fan of her. I know a lot of her content.
This is where y'all's privilege come in, because if y'all don't need
My privilege?
services,
My
from
content is a
trans-
resource.
If you do not need
First of all,
services
ma'am,
from
don't come for my
nonprofits
privilege,
that are trans-led, you
I
have
was raised by
privilege
drug
and you
addicts. I
have
had
access.
HIV.
You can have privilege in other areas, you know.
I would rather I create the resources. My content is
So we're going to work with detransitioners who actually need our help.
But we're not talking about military.
Oh my god.
But it wasn't actually a full ban, though. That's what people don't realize. Okay, so
You can still enlist.
People don't
nobody got kicked out
realize.
of the military. They didn't take a single person out of the military who came forward and had gender dysphoria. Two, it was actually easy. It's more open to serve under the ban than it was under Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could actually be a trans person and present however you wanted off duty. You could go to a ball in a dress and nobody cared, and they couldn't kick you out. And serving in the military, it's not a right. They can disqualify you for any reason, physical, anything. People get kicked out all the time because they can't pass PT tests.
Right.
And overseas, yeah, you don't necessarily have access to refrigerators for your testosterone or any of that other stuff. So if you're taking injections, it's a lot
I'm
different.
supposed to refrigerate it?
No, I don't know, man. I don't know too much about the transgender military, man, but I don't think that they should. Then why is this even a topic of discussion if transgender people aren't completely?
Yeah. Once again, don't really get the whole thing. It's very odd when people. The whole military thing to me makes no sense, because like if you want to kill trans people, the best thing to do is to send them off to the military, and then do a little telling of the enemy where they're going to be, all that sort of thing. I'm not giving people any ideas. I'm just saying, to me, it just seems like, makes very little sense. Also, if you're somebody who thinks that they're not going to really do a good job, well, not sure if you can comprehend the fact that your military is heavily armed. You're not fighting with your fucking fists.
Who's joining the military not to serve in the country, but only to get the cheaper drugs and
Hello.
the paid for surgery? and I don't want that trans.
Well, actually, a good chunk of people are joining the military to get general medical treatment. So, arguably, a certain portion of people will join. But that's just in general. Like, that's what happens now. Regardless of whatever America, as long as America has a health service that is just so shite, it's gonna be, they're gonna have that thing where people will go, oh, it's free healthcare, oh, okay, I'm gonna join then. It doesn't matter if I'm gonna die, because to be honest, yeah, I'll die if I don't. You know, I'll die of poverty. So, you know.
Person.
Okay, who's joining the military because they got a woman pregnant and they just need to pay their bills. There's so many different reasons why people join the military.
I want dedicated people that want to defend the country that I live in.
There are easier ways to get drugs.
Okay, but there are millions and millions.
Oh my fucking god, America. Defend the country. I mean, America has been attacked so few times. Like, so few times. Very few Americans have been killed in America by foreign agents. You know, so, like, it's just insane to me. Just the level of just, oh my. Anyway, you know, but anyway, just to me, just come on, America, let's just understand, you know, if you invade another country and you kill its people, they're only going to be more angry about it, you know. They're only going to have a much higher rate of sign-ups, and it's only going to stoke more hatred towards you as a country. So, you know, just...
Maybe not millions. There are so many people who join the military just for the benefits. Like,
yeah.
If not, that's probably the reason they join, are for the benefits. Do you know how many benefits you get for being in the military? People join. That's why they put the benefits in the military, so people join it.
Yeah. Like, why else would you join the military if you weren't a fucking psychopath? But there are some psychopaths here at this table, so I guess, you know, that would make sense that some of them would join. But, like, yeah, why would you join the military? It's like, oh, yes, if you can go abroad and you can possibly die. For what reason? Oh, so this corporation that we had a little deal with, so they can stop natural resources out of this country. That's right. Woo! That's what you're going to be killing civilians for. Be killing civilians so that this corporation can make more money. Woo! Good on ya, boys and girls and lashes and all the other people. Yeah. Woo! Join the US Army today. Wouldn't be much of a great effort, would it? But you get these benefits, then you can mask the other stuff over and you go, well, now we don't need to lie.
There are plenty of people who are there who don't give a shit about being there.
I just really hope.
Being in sync has never been more important.
Really?
With Exalate, you can keep all teams on the same page.
Well, goodbye.
I hope that the people at the top that you're referring to aren't transphobic, because let's be clear of the isms that are in the military.
And we live in America, people are allowed to
I'm
be.
speaking. Do not interrupt a black trans woman when she's speaking.
You've interrupted me hella times.
When it comes to isms,
I can picture Sasha in this situation, right?
Yes, you know, you can interrupt me hella times, but also I'm interrupting you, so yeah, well, shut the fuck up then.
No, what the fuck is look at his face, dude.
First of all, that is so disrespectful to tell a person of color, a black person, how they should feel. How dare you sit up here and say
no, it's disrespectful to a white person. You screamed at him, and you're being disrespectful. Rewind the tape.
Can you please stop? We're good.
You need to calm down.
No, you do, honey.
Oh my God, someone get his Xanax.
Okay. If you want someone to calm down, first step is don't keep fucking interrupting them and go, you can interrupt me.
For her.
Oh, keep it cute, girl. Keep it real cute.
That's my fucking line, Blair. Don't take my. Actually, I think she says that too. So I need a goddamn Xanax right now, dude. Fuck.
The bodyguard's outside, but the rest of shit isn't.
The rules are you cannot speak when somebody else is speaking. Schools should include trans conversation in sex ed.
Sorry. Yeah, I'd say yes. Yeah.
They should include any LGBT in sex ed.
Really?
You guys waited on that?
That's pretty vile.
I feel like
Yeah, you would say that, wouldn't you? You see, the thing is, if you're not educated, then you're gonna be like, you know, you're gonna be like you, or you're gonna be worse than you know.
Like as someone who had top surgery and went on hormones, like it's a very emotionally intense experience. I think in terms of like minors getting surgery, like the reason why I'm not like no to that is because I feel like maybe someone's like 17 or something. I honestly feel like it is a really intense surgery. I know for me, like top surgery when I was like 16 would have been like so good, and it would have literally like saved my spinal cord from like binding all the time. That's why I'm like, yeah, like I feel like in instances like it can make sense.
I feel like Sasha is spot on with that for sure. It can definitely save. There is definitely like an age where it's like, okay, is it safe? Is it not safe? When you're a minor, there are a lot of things that come into having surgeries, and it's not just top surgery. There is a lot of consent that needs to happen through the parents, through the children, through therapists, and through doctors. You know, I did have mine at 19, which is still fairly young, and I am 27, and I am still super happy that I had it. And if I could have had it earlier, it would have been better, especially for people with bigger chests, like Sasha says. That can save, you know, binding can also affect your chest and your surgery results. If you can save some years from not having to bind, that's helpful too.
So I'm not a trans man, so I don't have the experience or whatnot, but I do think that it has to be done safely. There is a process when it comes to having these types of gender affirming surgeries. You know what I'm saying? Talking with your parents and then going to endocrinologists and going through therapy to make sure this is right for you. People have a choice to their autonomy. Now, I know that...
I think the problem is really with parents. This is a thing that not only America has, but many countries have, which is very odd. And this idea of the parent. Okay, well, why do the parents have any say, you know? Like, you might say the government should have a say, but why do the parents have a say? Is there any sense in that? Well, not really when we think about it, because, like, the parents have a say just because.
Everybody does not. Yeah. But those that do or whatnot should choose with the right medical education.
Yeah.
They should choose with safety and with full understanding of what is a benefit and what may not be a benefit.
I agree with the caveat that there does need to be some sort of process, which there is, by the way, in place.
Yes, absolutely.
Sometimes does it slip through? Yes, things happen because, again, as I said earlier, this is a big world. But to, again, negate people the ability to walk through a door that you have walked through, I'm going to say this again, and then close it behind you, is a little bit of a slap in the face for anybody who's seeking transition.
Yeah.
And as somebody who has experienced top surgery and also waited quite a bit of time, a lot of severe damage actually was created to my rib cage that my wife, who is half my size, actually has the same size rib cage in the back as mine. And these are permanent damage to my body because I binded for about 8 years, and there's even still issues that I have with breathing and certain issues that I face that, you know, unfortunately, if I had that surgery a lot earlier, I'd have a better posture. I'd have a lot of pain that is not within my body that I have to deal with on a daily basis, while simultaneously the idea that, you know, I get maybe under 16, top surgery would be something that would possibly even make me a little uncomfortable, but I also know that I was homeless at 16, paying my own rent, and left my home at 16 and had to live my life as an adult very early. So I was able to make those decisions for myself, but I think it's weird that others can't seem to see that I could make a medical decision for myself when I had to physically take care of myself. My transition, my top surgery has done nothing but take physical pain off my body, especially with as large-chested as I was, and having to bind for as many years as I did.
Yeah, like as I said, I think that, yeah, sure, you might argue like therapy and stuff like that, and consulting and all that sort of things, but you wouldn't. I don't think you should involve parents. Potentially, if a minor wants to involve parents, but if they don't, then why would you? That just seems like foolishness, you know. Like, you know, it's just kind of a bit stupid, you know.
So this is what the conservatives are going to say. This is exactly what they're going to say. You shouldn't be able to make that decision until 18 plus or maybe even older, because what if you look back and you regret it because the detransitioners that we're seeing, blah, 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 were forced into blah, blah, blah. That's my guess. I'm just guessing.
I don't think any minor should be having life-altering elective surgery or life-altering elective medicalization, period. And so when I work on bills across the country that do ban this for minors, there's a couple things I point out. I point out that I don't think a 16-year-old female who wants breast implants should be able to get that either. When we look at what we allow minors to do, like...
Okay, but that's also a different thing. Needing breast implants at 16 is something that somebody would want, and it's not debilitating to them. Now, if there was a 16-year-old who was just biological female, not trans or anything like that, and had gigantic boobs who were giving her back issues and stuff like that, whatever, blah, 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 she literally has a horrible quality of life. She would be eligible to have a surgery under all the consent. This is not a trans person, because it's debilitating to her health, her mental health, her body, and all that stuff. Someone would be eligible at 16 for that if they had really, really big boobs.
They're not life-saving. They're not, if you don't get it, you're not going to die. It's not like having appendicitis and having your appendix removed or anything like that. It's elective. I think that's the key point here.
My thing about surgery, I'm actually vehemently against surgery. Like all of it, top surgery, bottom surgery, all of it. Particularly because you need your genitals. Like, it's just that simple. You know, you have these people now who have non-functioning fake penises and vaginas that, you know, you've had issues like, for instance, Richie had, where like your urethra folds in half and then you can't pee no more.
Yeah, I feel like they need to look up some of the.
This is about
are you talking top surgery too? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just surgery.
Okay, but I think at the end of the day, that is up to the person. There are risks to every single surgery that you get, so if you do want to take that risk, you should have the freedom to be able to take that risk.
Also, just, you know, it's also there's situations where you have you have a medical condition anyway, you know.
You shouldn't ban people from having that choice. If they want to go into that knowing the risks, let them do it. And if the risks happen, then...
Interestingly, if somebody is forced to use a bathroom that doesn't match their gender, then they will probably be more likely to hold it, which can cause serious urethra issues and, many issues health-wise, because they're holding it and they're trying to avoid using public or even public or even private but not their own bathrooms or toilets.
That's what they signed up for.
But, and I did have to go through, for top surgery and testosterone, I had to go through, a really big process. And I think that's my thing is, instead of an age thing, I think there's, there should be a process. You should have to, live as that gender and be seeking care and be having, a therapist for long-term and a psychiatrist for long-term and an endocrinologist for long-term. And, it's really, specific to the person and I think would be, really rare anyway. But that's just my stance.
I agree with Sasha. Essentially the same thing. I had to go through a process. I believe there should be a process. You should live for X amount or whatever. I know that you've waited this long to get your surgery. I know the feeling, and I know how long you have to wait to get your hormones. I was a child. I was 8 years old. I say it all the time when I knew I was trans. I was probably 3 when I knew, and I was so sick of waiting, but I still went through with the process that I had to, and that was talking to a therapist.
There is a certain factor among this which I think occurs, which is this very odd thing of I had to go through something, so you should have to go through it as well, which is very, very odd that happens within people. And I mean, within many different people of all walks of life. It's very concerning to see.
And a doctor and taking the hormones and living as a man and making sure this is what I want. I knew it was what I wanted since I even went through puberty, okay? But I still did that just in case.
That I agree with to an extent.
This is definitely the prompt that I am the most passionate about because I think there are few things more vile, more irresponsible, more, dangerous than saying a child can consent to permanently removing a body part that serves an extremely important function.
What function?
Detransitioners all over the country can never breastfeed their children if they...
Gonna be honest, bit of a weird thing. That is not important.
They can even have them because if they did other things, that can stop them from having kids at all, right?
I told you that was going to be a point. Of course.
But breastfeeding is not necessarily important. It's once again, it's a thing which is, it's...
Of course, it was Blair who wrote it out.
The idea that a child can consent to a sex change, to a gender-affirming surgery.
Children can't...
If you believe that,
Sorry,
there's really nothing that you can believe they can't consent to, right? Because that's pretty extreme. That's a permanent body modification under the best circumstances. I mean,
well, no, actually, that's not really true, because that makes very little sense.
You have to be so demented to believe that a child fully understands. I heard a few conversations about,
okay, but what's the difference? Okay, let's say the day before I turn 18, how is that any different to the day after? Have I changed in that period of time? Over those nanoseconds, have I changed? The answer is no. The only difference is that I've legally become an adult. This is why, we just don't have a system of just oh my God.
Child fully understands. That's how being a
child
child
works. If a 17-year-old living as male.
I get it. I understand that we change with age, especially in our teen years. I get it. We don't understand everything, but when it comes to transgender and a majority of the time we are correct, but we can't be right 100% of the time, and that's where I think these people fail. So it's oh, this person was wrong about their...
Interestingly, a good chunk of people who are... will technically not detransition. They just they will no longer be trans. But they will say it's not trans, but I was non-binary. So that's the thing that you have there.
Transition and they got surgery when they were 16. Let's ban everybody else from it too, just because of that one person. That's fucked up. That's unfair because of one person's mistake where they thought that was the right choice for them, with the doctors, with what they were saying, with their parents, with every single thing that they've been through. And now 4 years down the line, oh, I was wrong about that. Let's just ban it for everybody else. That doesn't make any sense because the other 99% are totally okay and totally cool today. I don't even want to talk about it again because I've brought it up.
If you look at a proportion, it's very odd. The sort of idea of you ban it because of detransition, okay, but that's a smaller rate than
so many videos, but a majority of
the existence of trans people. So it's
people who detransition do so because of societal pressure or because they can't pass or they can't afford it or something like that, not because they actually don't experience gender dysphoria.
The prompt was about minors and
so yeah, so that's the main thing, and then after that is actually, they're they're non-binary. So they're just saying, gee, I wasn't non-binary. So, they haven't, technically speaking, in a sense they've detransitioned, but they also arguably haven't fully, If you know what I mean.
Are getting top surgery. So it's easy to say, well, if it's 17-year-olds, okay, well,
In my state, that's actually
there's a
legal
nuanced
age.
conversation about even 17-year-olds, I guess, because the age of consent in some places is lower, but that's not what's happening, right? It's 12-year-olds.
When we talk about minors, it's like, what?
That's the thing that with Jubilee as well, that kind of sucks, because there's a spread of misinformation. Where are the 12-year-olds getting top surgery?
Even among adults, we all do
As well, that kind of sucks, because there's a spread of misinformation. Where are the 12-year-olds
getting so I think this is another weak leg down.
top surgery?
Even among adults, we all do different things in our transition. Some of us want bottoms, some of us don't, some of us want tops, some of us don't. So you need a lot of time as an adult to figure out what you want to do.
But see, the thing is, though, some adults don't even understand what they want to do.
Exactly,
So,
so how can a child?
But okay, I get it.
But see, the thing is, Blair, listen to me. So the person who's in their 80s and they're still unsure. Oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. I can't be sure. But see, the thing is, Blair, that's the point. See, people are different. All these people are different. And that's why we do this thing called gauging. See, the person who isn't sure and says, I'm not sure, is, not sure. You're not obviously going to say, no, you will transition now, you are not sure. Like, no, it's the person who, like, this makes no fucking sense. Anyway.
I get it. The thing is, though, but our minds are changing all the time, and that's why I'm saying people can't be right 100% of the time. We can't. It is impossible.
Well, even if you look at that, like, the fact is, if someone's like, oh, I'm not sure, okay, so then no, then, it's very simple.
When it comes to what you want and how you feel in your body, you're pretty in tune with that. But if you aren't and you were wrong, then you got to live with it. So what? That's that person's business. That's their life. That's what they did. Why should we stop other people from doing it when they know that's what they want? It's what I wanted. It's what many, many other trans people wanted, and we're living our life happily. So once you start taking that away from people, you're going to have so many more issues.
The reason why I'm against it is because, like you said, the children need to go through the proper steps, the parents, the doctors. But in the state of California, if you, as a parent, tell your minor, no,
yeah,
you're not getting this, I'm not affirming your gender, I'm taking your kids away, and California's going to raise your kids for you. So how's that? That's not right.
That is not true. When you look between the lines, that is not true. I am going to stand with what I believe in.
That's not right.
That is not.
In 2017, Ontario, lawmakers updated the province's child welfare laws to include gender identity and gender expression as factors child protection workers should consider when determining the best interests of a child and whether they should be placed in foster care. Keep in mind, if parents are abusing their children, psychologically, they arguably should go to prison for that. So, arguably doesn't go far enough. Child protection workers cannot remove children from their families solely on the basis of parents refusing to accept their child's gender identity or expression. Potentially, actually, a massive problem. Even not doing that, because in what sense do they refuse to accept? There's let's ignore that, and then there's actively trying to force your child into not being trans. There's a gap there. Only when there is proof of abuse, that's the thing. Only when there's proof of abuse or neglect can child protection workers intervene. The Canadian government is not involved in this process, so it's Ontario, so
not true.
Not
Between the lines, that is not true. I am going to stand with what I believe in. I don't think you should just be able to go in and be like, hey, I want testosterone. Hey, I want top surgery, and then be able to get it. People talk about this happening, and it has happened. Like I said,
people can get testosterone. I don't think they can get it as minors, but they can get it as adults for other reasons. So
a process, and I know that it sucks, and I know some of you might not like to hear that, but I knew from a young age, and it's a fucking shitty waiting game, but it still helps people in the end, and all they have to do is fucking, I don't even know, you know what, let me run for president, I'll figure it out, we'll figure out all the stupid trans shit, just a couple of year timeline, okay? Oh god, dude, this conversation.
The obsession with the conservatives about other people's kids. If it is your child, it is your choice what you do with your kid.
Yeah, okay, simple point. That was
nah, I don't really agree with that.
I wish I heard more about that point. That was a simple point. They are so obsessed with other people's children, it's not your fucking child, so shut the fuck up.
Yeah, the argument is, though, is that what is even, to be fair, though, to people who are hung with people's kids, what is the right? Why exactly would you say a parent has any idea about how to raise a child? Like, this has been a case for generations where people have gone, parents do not know how to raise children. That's not to say, by the way, that they'll be bad at it, but the fact is, parents do not have a right to simply go, oh, well, I think my child should be raised this way, so there we are. It's like, if that was not your child, that would be considered abuse. But it is your child, so technically it's not, So, I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying you shouldn't go about the place saying, oh, parents are the gospel. Like, no.
All of a sudden, you want to save all the children from what? From what? Their parents helping them out? Their parents saying, okay, let's get you to the therapist and the doctor and let's talk about this because it's...
But the thing is, that also works in the reverse. It works as for some saying that the parents of children shouldn't be allowed to do that, but it also works for people who are, saying that they are allowed to pull their child out of school. Parents saying they are allowed to do all these sort of things. Like, why exactly do you, as a parent, have a right to force another human being to do something? Like, first of all, there's indoctrination. And then there's also the factor that, well, especially if the human being is against that, okay, now you're just forcing them, and it's like, well, it's okay because they're parents. Okay, that's a weird thing. So just because they're legally their owners, like,
It's a bit confusing. Why? How is that child abuse?
Non-binary should not be considered under the trans umbrella.
Oh.
Non-binary should not be considered under the trans umbrella.
They get you.
I think it's fine. Wait. Non-binary should not be considered. Oh, so they said yes, it shouldn't be under the trans umbrella. Okay.
I think that the concept of a transgender umbrella is inherently an issue, right? Because when you're talking about something as nuanced, complex, full of social dynamics, medical dynamics, so many things to be considered, when you're talking about a transsexual, you should really be specific, right? And this entire concept actually of transgender is relatively new. Like, it came about in the 70s or 80s through queer theory, when originally it was about transsexual.
Well, actually, see, now, here's a little bit of a history lesson for you. Words, you see, come into fashion and words change, and sometimes what's interesting is you might have a word that never existed in English but technically did exist because it existed in other languages. This is a factor that many people just fail to realize. They're like, well, look, this thing, it's all new. It's like, no, it's new to England, it's new to English, and then if it's like a new thing to your country, it's new to your country, guys. But just because something's new to your country doesn't mean it's new for everyone. You fucking moron. Sometimes things are a little bit more complex than just, well, that word hasn't been ever in use. It's like, yes, in your language, you fucking idiot. Anyway,
which was...
Notion has been the centerpiece of my workflow. Okay. It's quite literally an extension of my brain.
Is it? Quite literally.
Was considered a medical diagnosis, which...
Understandably, but with growth and changes in not only society but and we learn new things about new experiences. Therefore, that expands the meaning of and also the fact is that historically speaking, we've learned more about it.
It was a medical process, and it defines something very specific.
Before, I mean, we like we knew it could be argued we knew more about being transgender before, and then there was a regression. So,
So for me, when I hear that non-binary, which, if I'm to understand correctly, means that
androgynous.
Right, and it means you identify somewhere in between male and female. That's not what a transsexual is.
No. The thing is, though, oh my god.
Transsexual is someone who has undergone a gender reassignment surgery. And then transgender is, someone who could have just begun their process of being trans. Also wanted to point out the white in the transgender flag literally represents neutral gender or no gender. So that's what the use of the white line is. And, not every non-binary person also claims the term trans. They just want to be who they are. And some people do feel comfortable with the trans label. It's just really hard for me to wrap my head around why that bothers some people. That's all.
The definition of a trans person is somebody whose body has been altered, or somebody who identifies as a different gender whose body has been altered by hormones or surgery.
And there's two genders. So if you want to say, you identify as a different gender, it has to be one of those two, which would make you a transsexual if you're actually trans. I think it makes about...
Yeah.
much sense as saying that bisexual is under the straight umbrella. It's like, no, that's a separate thing. And I think there's beauty in being separate things. There's beauty in having your own lanes. And my concern is there's so much, clearly, as we see today, really heated conversations about trans people that when you start adding in queer theory, non-binary, it just makes it muddy. And the people at home, hello.
Yeah, that would be inaccurate. But to say it would be underneath the active sexual orientation, would be true. That's not quite the right terminology, but you know what I mean. People who are actively, would want to perform those actions. That would be a group that you could apply because it's not a group that everyone's part of. You know what I mean? Anyway, sorry.
Don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I get Blair's argument here. It can get confusing even for other transgender people. Trans in itself is confusing for other people to understand, and having multiple different ways to identify definitely makes it more difficult. But that doesn't mean it has to be a bad thing. It can be assimilated over a period of time into society with no big deal. There are just specific circumstances that will have to take place if so. And by the way, have you ever had a non-binary barista make your fucking coffee? We need non-binary people. So get Blair, you have to stop. But also, I think we are in the age of breaking down the gender binary, clearly, and this is only the beginning. But just because it's confusing doesn't mean it's bad.
Here's the thing about a lot of the people who identify as non-binary, so to speak. When they do so, they typically don't medically transition. Right. And when you do so, at that point, it's a costume.
Well, it's gender nonconformity, right? And so we.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a costume. It's gender nonconformity.
Yeah.
They're not. You're non-binary. You're not conforming to either or gender. Which also doesn't make it a third gender.
Yeah. Also, wouldn't that make like somebody like every single person be doing a costume? You know? Like a trans man will be doing a costume of a man, as well as a cis man will be doing a costume of a man. A trans woman will be doing a costume of a woman, the same as a cis woman will be doing a costume of a woman, and a non-binary person will be doing a costume of a non-binary person. Like, it doesn't really make much sense, because it's like, okay, but a costume is just the typicalities of that gender. So like, you just okay, but the costume then would just be the thing you wear, which would just be like, okay, no, that's not really how that works.
Take this off. I can't take this off.
Yeah, as Blair's saying, we look at gender
Right. Well, no, you could take the shirt and tie off. Well, is it a shirt tie, or is it, what would you describe that? Well, it's more of a jumper, isn't it? You know what I mean? Not tie. Fuck. No, I mean shirt and sweatshirt.
I know. Okay, you can wear what you want. You can present however you want, but it doesn't make you something different.
I feel like a non-binary.
Yeah, but oh my god. Oh my fucking god. Do you? Oh, okay, that's.
No, I don't want to speak for non-binary people at all, but I just feel like someone who is non-binary is going against the gender stereotypes and all that stuff, and they are Sam. They are Sam. They are not this idea of what you would call a woman or a man. They're just who they want to be, and that's how they feel comfortable expressing themselves. And I don't see how I can understand how that definitely confuses people. I have no issue with someone just being Sam, and me referring to them as so.
I meet a trans person, right? Like a trans woman, a trans man. There is an inherent camaraderie. Like when you mentioned, I can't take this off. Part of me almost got a little bit emotional. I know it's hard to believe people think I have emotions.
Okay, but the fact is that you could take your actual clothes off. You shouldn't in a public place, but you could. The key thing is it wouldn't remove you. So yes, in a sense, but isn't everyone who is wearing clothes, isn't everyone wearing a costume, if you want to describe them that way? Which is a very odd way of describing it, because, okay. But, so that's just a very odd thing to say.
Really do. And because I saw you in that moment, I said, you know what, we are similar in that way. We may be different in other ways. We don't know each other very well, but we have that.
Yeah,
when I talk to you or I'm around a non-binary person, it doesn't really click, it doesn't connect because it is so different. So I think that's inherently, I should be able to see some semblance of my own issue within that person, and I don't when they're non-binary at all.
And so I have no issue with non-binary people, I just don't.
So Blair's saying that she doesn't see similarities between her and a non-binary person. I'm just trying to think of that point. But Blair doesn't see similarities between her and a lot of different trans people anyways. But you have to feel some sort of dysphoria if you are non-binary.
Yeah.
Otherwise you wouldn't be non-binary, right? I'm asking the question. I'm not making a statement. I'm asking because I don't feel educated enough on the non-binary community to actually say things that I think are inherently true. But you're not aligning with the gender assigned at birth, so they make you non-binary. So aren't there similarities there? Wouldn't there be similarities there between me and somebody who is NB?
I don't think that we're the same.
Yeah, same.
And so,
we are also not exactly. We are not the same. Like I'm a trans man.
And like, to be fair, if Blair's saying that to, if Blair was only saying that to trans women, that would make sense. Because okay, it's okay. Well, then non-binary people wouldn't be that. But if you're saying that to a trans man, then you are saying that the fact that connects you is the fact that you're trans, not the fact that you're trans woman. Because they're not. You know what I mean?
And you are non-binary. Let's see what the libs have to say. Stupid libs.
I think it would be really hard for a cis person to truly imagine what it's like to be trans and what it's like to live with that and be born that way. And I'm not non-binary, and so I really cannot picture what it would. I'm a binary trans person. I can't imagine what it's like to be in between that. But just like how the cis person can't really truly understand that, it doesn't mean that it's not a thing and it's not real. And I really believe that we have like 85 years.
Oh, purse lips.
just like on this earth, and like so many people spend so much time being like sad and uncomfortable in their bodies, and if we were just all comfortable, like if somebody like wants to go by a name and like dress a certain way and they are saying this makes me so comfortable, this is what makes me happy, there is no reason they shouldn't do that. And my God, there is no reason why we should say, well, you're not a part of this because like this is us and like this is whatever, because literally like we could all sit here and agree that like non-binary people are like not a part of the trans community or whatever.
Blair, listen to a person without fucking making faces. Sorry.
And I believe that non-binary people are a part of the community because I have so many shared experiences with so many non-binary people I know. We have very similar experiences in growing up with dysphoria, with transition, with anything, and nobody has to do anything. Nobody has to transition in a way they don't want to transition. And yeah, like let's be a happy family. My God, let's all just be happy.
Exactly. That's all it comes down to. That's what I'm trying to fucking say. Who gives a fuck? Who cares if people want to dress a certain way or go by the name Zach and be called they? It's just like, let people fucking exist in the way that they want to exist without saying, well, you're not fucking trans. You can't sit here. You can't sit here with us. Fucking Regina George over here. You can't sit with us because she's the goddess of who is and who isn't trans.
I actually understand like a lot of the points that are being made here from the conservative side because I grew up conservative. I voted when I was 18. I voted for fucking Bush.
Damn, girl.
Like I was conservative.
I mean, a good portion of Americans are stupid. That's
conservative, okay? We're the same age. So it was not until my later age that I kind of decided, like, you know what, let me be more open to different types of communication, different types of people. I actually talked so much shit about pronouns, like they, them, all this. I was like, what is this trash? When it first started really coming out, I did not disagree. I did not agree with it. I was like, what is this? This is stupid. How can you be a them? Blah, 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 blah.
You were
and
correct.
I did the whole thing, the grammatically, you're interrupting me.
But you were correct.
But
what?
I was like, what is this? This is stupid. How can you be a them? Blah, 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 blah.
You were
and I did the
correct.
whole thing, the
oh, weren't they now? Ha, my God. That is an interesting take there, huh?
grammatically, you're interrupting me.
But you were correct. I'm agreeing with
They
you.
asked,
Bro, she's so snarky. I just can't deal with the fucking disrespect. I hate people who are disrespectful. They is, you can use it as a singular pronoun. God damn. As someone who is an avid reader and someone who fucking reads plays and Shakespeare and
Also, very weird thing. You know people who say that it's not quite right. You do realize, maybe, here's a thought. Maybe don't just go, well, our language is shite. It's just shite. It's completely awful. We just have missing words everywhere. I was walking down the town the last day and I didn't have words for half the things. And then I thought I just didn't. I forgot them. But then it turned out, no, we just don't have words for them. I pointed at them and they were like, well, that's it's a type of shop that sells bread. And we had to come up with the idea of a bakery. Because, you know, bread is baked, so it's a bakery. You know, it's like, do you comprehend that even if they wasn't a singular use, you would just be arguing that your language is bad and it just doesn't have these words, which is a very weird argument. Like, okay, we just have an awful language. That's my defense. Gotcha.
off and all this bullshit. Like, I can't, and I'm an actor, and I can't deal with the fact that people don't understand the basic, and I also wanted to be an English teacher, so I know a lot about English. I fucking read all the time. You can use it as a singular.
To be fair, Americans, you know, their comprehension of English is a little bit different than ours.
It's not bullshit. It is a fucking pronoun, just like you is a pronoun, they is a pronoun, he is a pronoun, she's a pronoun, I is a pronoun, me. Like, it's not bullshit. Yes, it might be hard for that to come out of your mouth when you're talking about your friend, and you're like, Sam, they want to go to Urban Outfitters to go buy some clothes to see what fits them best. Yeah, it might be hard for you to say that, but grammatically, it is not incorrect. Therefore, someone can use those pronouns. It might make you uncomfortable. You might think it's weird. That's fine. But if you love someone...
Yeah, but as I said, though, even if it wasn't technically speaking grammatically incorrect, it wouldn't make much sense because, like, okay, but is that your argument that it's not grammatical? So we just decided that okay, weird argument for your entire structure of not calling someone they because, well, that's the way it's been. It just exists in other languages. Yes. So, is this just my language and maybe a few other languages is the only problem? Yes, but still though, I have a right because my language is shite and I stand by that. Like, it just doesn't make much sense even if it wasn't in use, you know, for hundreds of years.
Sam, you're gonna treat them in a way that makes them comfortable. It's not trash. Blair, read a fucking book. Read a play. Go take an English class or something. I can't.
I asked you not to comment, and you're commenting, so if you could stop, that'd be great. Thank you. So anyway, as I was saying, so I changed my mind because I got to spend time around other people who were non-binary, who were non-conforming, and I got to speak with them and I got to experience their life and their experiences. And then I realized myself, I'm like, shit, maybe this is what I've been experiencing my whole life, only because I was exposed to it. If I would have never been exposed to it, I would have never known that this could have been my experience. And I would have lived the rest of my life as a different person, somebody who I'm not. And it's funny that you keep talking, that some people keep talking about, oh, you need to go through HRT, you need to have surgeries in order to be trans. That is all garbage.
Another thing I never said is just so crazy.
Again, you're still interrupting me while I'm talking. This is the second time now.
Sorry.
That is all. You keep talking, that some people keep talking about, oh, you need to go through HRT, you need to have surgeries in order to
So some people have said this.
be trans. That is all garbage.
Another thing I never said is just so crazy.
Okay. Blair, it makes you sound a little bit self-obsessed when somebody goes, I mean, some people say this. You're like, well, I never said that. It's like some people, are just really, really, really evil. They've killed so many people. I have never killed anyone. I said some people. Jesus. How? Why are you jumping on that? It's some people. I mean, to be fair, you could make the argument that they were giving off vibes of like, yeah, some people looking at you, but you know.
Crazy.
Again, you're still interrupting me while I'm talking. This is the
You're
second
addressing.
time
Another thing I didn't say.
Are they addressing you though?
It's not everything about you.
Are they?
HRT, you need to have surgeries in order to be trans. That is all garbage.
Another thing I never said is just so crazy.
Again, I mean, sometimes it's like the power that needs to hold me back.
I mean, you're
because-
appropriating a medical condition. That's what you're.
See you, Matt. There. It's like, they're like, yeah, I did. Problem solved.
doing.
I exist. I am proof that non-binary people exist and that it is a thing. And because I'm sitting right here in front of all of you, I'm a real person. This is my experience, just as yours is a trans experience. That as a trans woman, but I'm not here to belittle your experience or to tell you that you don't exist. And that's the difference between you and I. That you're trying to cancel you. And when I say you, I'm talking about conservatives. And maybe it is you. You're part of the thing. You're part of the thing.
Here's where I get to interject because there's a lot of things said about
Stop
me.
addressing her. Just talk to everybody.
But what is your dysphoria?
Well, there was something. I never said you don't exist. So we can add that to the long list of things y'all have said. I've said that I didn't. We know you exist. You're here. You're not fictitious, right? My point is you're different than me, and I don't even think you deny that. But yet when I say it, it's an issue, right? The same way that he said he can't take that off. You can, right? It's different. At the very least,
They could take off their clothes. Just
different. And when we have a community that there are so many categories, demi-girl, demi-boy, astrosexual, all this shit, but y'all can't fathom that maybe that would be a different category than what I am when we have such different, as you keep saying, and everyone keeps
Well,
saying.
they do know that it's a different thing, but if that's under the trans umbrella, they're identifying as trans, but they know that they're not a trans woman or a trans man. I mean, if they really want to, no pun intended, create a new community, go for it. But I just think it was easier for non-binary people to be recognized under the category of trans because they feel dysphoria, and gender dysphoria is part of what you need to get diagnosed as fucking trans.
It doesn't make sense. A bisexual is different than a gay man.
I actually want to ask you a question. What is your dysphoria, though?
Right.
Because gender dysphoria, or sex dysphoria, as I would rather call it, is an uncomfortability.
It's not just a strong desire to be rid of one's primary and/or secondary sex characteristics because of a marked incongruence with one's experience, expressed gender, or in young adolescents, a desire to prevent the development of anticipated secondary sex characteristics.
Between my secondary sex characteristics, not just what I wear on a daily basis, because masculinity and femininity doesn't have anything to do with being trans.
But that is not true. You can have dysphoria without having to be dysphoric about your sex parts.
What is your
you can have
dysphoria?
dysphoria
What is
about
your
anything.
dysphoria?
Straight cis women have dysphoria about their breasts all the time. They get breast augmentation.
It's not dysphoria.
That doesn't mean that I'm not dysphoric about certain things.
I cannot believe that I grew up as, this 5-year-old little kid experiencing just crippling gender dysphoria, like horrible thoughts, struggled so much my entire life to be sitting in this room and you're explaining to her what dysphoria is.
I have my experience.
Let me explain, Blair. Imagine somebody is stabbed and they say the only violence that can ever be done to a person is being stabbed. And somebody who is being set on fire says, well, that's not really true. And then you say, how can you sit here and say to this person who's being stabbed, how can you say to them that's included in violence? It's like, no. The thing is, it is, though, being set on fire is also being violence done to you. So is being stabbed as well. No one's denying that. It is. But the thing is, but it also encompasses other things as well. Do you understand? So the person who says it's just getting stabbed, they're not wrong about it being getting stabbed. That is part of it. But they are wrong about it only being that. Do you understand? There's a little bit of complexity to things,
It's
doesn't mean that I
amazing.
didn't have crippling.
You got a different
It doesn't
experience.
mean
You got a
that-
different
Oh my God, we all have a
experience.
we all have a
We all have
different
different
experience.
experiences.
I know, but we're all
Maybe a different experience, but you know, as some have said there, they all have a different experience. So that's sort of a key point, you know. You can't just go, you had a different experience. Yeah. Yes, and if in an alternative universe you were run over by a bus, that alternative you would have had a different experience. Mainly the bus thing, and also the pain.
Every single person's experience here with gender dysphoria even is different, most likely different.
Yeah. Doesn't make much sense to say your experience is different. Okay, it's still an experience with that thing though.
Every single one, in any type of way.
Person, so I can't speak for non-binary people, but I can talk about what I've been taught by non-binary people. From what I understand, when it comes to some non-binary people, sometimes they have to go into the gender binary for safety reasons, depending on the environment that they're in. A non-binary person stepping into this world and dismissing the gender norms of what people think a man and a woman is supposed to be like is so powerful. If you don't want to be mutable to the times of the expansion of the trans and non-binary experience, then just say that. I would rather you just say that you are not willing to move forward, learn the new terminology, learn the new pronouns that come with the trans umbrella and the trans experience for the most part.
My big thing when it comes to, I agree with a lot of the things that you just said. I actually love you. I adore you.
Oh, thank you. Right back at you.
But here's the thing, right? That's not the prompt. The prompt was, is it different? And it is. Again, when I go...
No, the prompt was, should it not be considered under the trans umbrella, which is, you know, not saying it's the same.
Well, I can't like take my beard off, girl. It's not coming off.
Right.
You know, unfortunately, you know, as much as I hate having facial hair despite being a guy, you know, like it. Like I can't go and reshape my body. I can't go and shave my Adam's apple down.
I don't really know how else to wrap that up.
Yeah.
Doctors are manipulating trans medical care.
That sounds like one of those weird sort of positions where it's kind of like a conspiracy theory sort of you know. Sorry.
They definitely can. Doctors manipulate any type of medical care, and they will if
like,
they could
you know what I mean? Like it's phrased in a way of a conspiracy theory, but you know, yeah.
do it with anything else they can. There are bad doctors and good doctors.
I think there's three types of doctors out there. I think there are the ones who absolutely think that they're doing this for the right reasons. I think that there are the ones who are absolutely doing it for money, like we saw at Vanderbilt. And then I think that there are, I don't know if it's incompetence or ineptitude or laziness. Because what we're seeing, not just in the trans community, we're seeing in society,
I agree with her.
SSRIs being pushed on patients. Mental health doctors are pushing so many different drugs without getting to the root issues.
See, I have
that actually falls into the other category of money. Because you may not have noticed this, but you know OxyContin? That was a massive thing, and it still is. That was because doctors were paid money to push it. So I wonder if that might be relevant to your money, fella. So that's not really incompetence. That is literally just money.
Interesting.
They do, and that's why I agree with that, because there are so many doctors who will be like, "You're sad. Here, you can't sleep." There are plenty of doctors who do bullshit, and
yeah, but the thing is, that's not necessary. That's in many cases not laziness. That is money because they get paid for that.
Now they can do it with trans people too. So I'm actually surprised that the libs didn't go up there.
I've been out for 11 years this year. I've been on testosterone since I was 15 years old, and even looking into it, I waltzed my little ass up into that doctor's office, and I left on testosterone. He gave me my first shot in the doctor's office that day. I was 15 years old. What if I had been wrong?
Sasha.
What if I had been wrong? It really just is that simple.
I'm joining the convo.
Wow, nice to see you.
That right there, though, that right there is an issue. See, that right there is an issue. I couldn't do that, which is interesting because me and him have a very similar timeline. 11 years, transitioned on T for 10, and I was seeing therapists before I even transitioned. I was literally told so much information from a therapist, then she recommended a doctor, then I had to meet that doctor, then we talked about all the stuff, we had a few meetings, all that stuff, and then finally came the day, and
That's
it was like
there is a certain amount of misrepresentation. If someone's like, oh, the first day was with the doctor, it's like, okay, first day was with the doctor. But also, for 4 years beforehand, I was not with the doctor and I was with a therapist. So, you know, and that therapist was actually in contact with that doctor and was constantly relaying information and communicating. And while I had never actually met the doctor, they basically were my doctor. They had never actually given me medical treatment, but, you know, effectively, that was what was going on there. So there's an issue with this, which can be misrepresentation, which is like, you know, that can be a massive problem, where you're not technically lying, where you're just obscuring facts to.
A year or two after I had been, probably 2 years after therapy, a year as living as a male, that I was, or a year and a half, I finally able to start testosterone by my doctor. She doesn't just throw things at you. She wants to get to the root of the issue, and that's the issue with some of these medical doctors. It's money in their pocket if they don't care, or ignorance.
I believe that people should be evaluated and go through tests. And like for me, getting on testosterone and getting surgery was a massive process in my life. But I do think that it probably happens, just like you said, like with SSRIs and stuff. Like things are overprescribed.
I do think it's a massive issue. I think that society in general, as Sarah mentioned. But when it comes to the trans issue, I think just the fact that there were really almost no detransitioners as recent as like 5-6 years ago.
That's not necessarily true.
It's exploded now shows that it is a massive issue. And I think that I can reflect what you said. I was over 18 when I started my hormones, but I had a 20-minute appointment, and just like you, I walked in and out with an estrogen prescription.
What the fuck? I didn't know that. Why did I have to go through such a long process? I just got I'm from Massachusetts. All right, I got the best of the best, so I have the best medical shit over here. But wow, holy fucking shit, dude.
Insane. I wasn't tested
I didn't
for my
have to see a
levels.
therapist first. I had no letter.
And you were a child.
I was a child.
So,
15.
That is a very,
in
very
one of the most
common-
conservative states in the country. So if that's what's going on
Wow.
in Georgia,
Wow.
imagine what's going on in
That seems like that
Everywhere else.
California.
definitely would break a few laws.
Hello.
Yeah, when I went
Hey, Massachusetts, it wasn't happening there, buddy. It's not like the most liberal state.
for my initial appointment, I literally helped my doctor find gender dysphoria on his chart and mark it for me.
That's insane.
And I walked out with my prescription
Yeah,
that day.
I mean, because I do a lot of work with the D-trans community, and
Wow. I'm sorry, I'm just mind blown, guys. Holy shit.
the problem is I actually don't really care too much about, if you are an adult and you walk into a doctor's office and want estrogen and you walk out. I don't think that's an issue. What is an issue is when doctors are not giving all the information, when they're actually telling you that this is what's right for you, and then it's not. They're actually manipulating their patients. They're manipulating, they say if you don't do this, you're going to kill yourself and all this stuff. So I would actually rather a doctor say, I have no idea what this is going to do to you, but it's your body, your choice. You can do what you want. And then
Are there doctors saying that, though? Like, are there doctors, like, having, like, someone sit down and say, I kind of feel uncomfy being a boy. Well, then you should take estrogen because, or you're going to kill yourself. So here's your prescription. I mean, the other things that people were saying sound more accurate. I don't know what she's really talking about. I still think as an adult, you should have some evaluation.
Another thing I was never informed of, when I started my hormone journey, and now it seems, like common sense, but I was, 20, so it's like, even 20-year-olds can have oversights. No one told me I had to freeze my sperm.
that's crazy.
So
Remember you
I'm
talked
years
about
into estrogen. I reached the point of adulthood where you maybe meet a partner.
Okay, but Blair, like, to be fair, because Blair acts like kids are stupid and they don't know these things, like, why don't you just Google it? If you ever thought about having kids or think common sense,
Also, that's fair, kind of, yeah. Like, also, it is a very weird thing if a doctor's like, you should freeze your sperm. They should do that, so you might have a little baby later on. So you can breed. That doctor's not creepy at all. No. What you mean? They just want you to breed later on. That's all. They just want to make sure that you can breed. Ah, God, that sounds disgusting, doesn't it? But see, that's sort of the point.
I'm going to put estrogen in my body. Will that affect my sperm or the functions of my genitals? Probably. Like, it's a common... I just feel like that's such a stupid card to play. Like, I just didn't fucking know. Well, do your research. I knew it when I was 16 years old. I knew it when I was even younger. When taking tea, and I already knew this before. My therapist said it like 10 times. But I was just like, that's a common sense point. If you're like 20...
people know about this. People know that, like, having some foods, like, if you've got a diet that's like some diets will reduce your sperm count. Or at least can do, They just do, like, scientifically, we know that, And sometimes that's unavoidable, but, that's just,
And you can't really put together the dots. I don't know.
And I learned that I can't. And it's simply because that doctor didn't care to tell me. And why? Who knows? Maybe it was...
But I do believe that doctor... No, I do believe that doctor should tell you. They should... that should be something they tell you. Like, they'd sit you down and tell you a list. That's what I was...
Yeah, but the way you say it is a bit odd. You to be fair... You could have an instance where they technically do tell you, like they give you a medical leaflet and they say, well, this is all the information, and it's a big long list, and it's like, and then you don't really read it properly or whatever it may be. They're not directly saying it to you, but as I said, that's a bit weird if doctors are like, I need you to understand, you need to freeze your sperm or else you won't be able to breed, later on in life, you won't be able to breed. That would be a weird thing for a doctor to do.
But at the same time, it's also a common sense thing. And also, why don't you do research? I'm not trying to defend the doctor. You need to educate someone before they take a medication. You let me know if this happens, whatever. Same goes for hormones, but like Blair, that's just, I don't like that. I'll move on. I just think that's stupidity.
Just because of money, it was easier for him or better for him to get me in and out and get that money rather than maybe a couple more appointments where I'm having to figure out, how to freeze my sperm in the meantime. But a lot of these doctors are also activists.
They also don't
Sorry, what?
tell trans men that they're going to go through menopause.
Right. There's a lot of issues with trans men. But Angel talks about that.
He almost
a lot of
died.
issues. Yeah.
He's
He
a
almost
friend of mine.
yeah. Insane.
Not the best and most reliable source, I would argue.
I cannot stand Buck Angel for the life of me. Buck Angel has smoked enough weed to rot his entire brain. Sorry, stoners. I'm sorry.
So I actually almost walked up because I do feel like the system is like pretty broken and there's not enough education, the medical system for doctors to be prescribing all the things that they do. Again, discussing SSRIs, like I was a victim of that myself. I empathize for those stories. I understand that does happen. I'm not negating that. But I think to negate medical service is somebody who needs it, who it might be life or death for, just because you feel some type of way about it, isn't right. Like, why do you care what little Timothy or Sally are doing or whatever? Like, why do you personally care what?
Well, Timothy and
they're
Sally
children,
are 8 and 12, so.
Okay.
But we're not talking about.
Once again, a little bit weird that you decide to meddle with children. Kind of. America does not have the best history with, meddling in other countries and in general people's affairs. It's a country that has a very bad history of that. A very long one too. Similar to England or France or many other countries. But America has a significantly big problem because, at least with England, you had slavery in England, but it wasn't as prevalent. People who had houses where they had had a manservant. They'd be like, yeah, this is this man here. He's from this country or this island. Don't ask about his pay, But you didn't have as much of that on the ground, and obviously you had basically, you had effective slavery via paying people such cheap wages, and then requiring them to buy things for very expensive prices. But you have all these sort of things here. But the point is that America has a massive problem with messing around with people and controlling them, and it's just maybe we should just question when Americans start to want to control individuals.
Children 7 or 12, and this doesn't happen often. Has it happened? Yeah, it has, because that's the thing. It's a big world. Like, things happen all the time. Things we can't even imagine happen. It just is a reality. But again, to walk through a door and then close it for other people to walk through, that's kind of messed up.
So to your point for being able to receive hormone therapy in the way that you did, I had a similar experience. I was able to walk in and get access to hormones. And that's
Where the fuck are you guys going? What? I've never heard how often this has happened. Okay, I guess I have to educate myself a little more. Holy fucking shit, dude. Has you guys, if you're still watching, have you done that?
I haven't heard that, no.
Why did I have to do arm and a leg? I'm happy I did an arm and a leg.
system was set up through advocacy because of what a lot of community folks are actually facing. Now, can I admit that there is some medical malpractice? Yes, I myself had issues obtaining testosterone consistently. For some reason, the script doesn't match up, or you got to get in contact with the doctor, and it was part of the reason why I chose actually to go off testosterone, because I didn't like the idea of not having constant access, because I was worried about the damage that it could cause to my body, and also because I wanted to keep intact my reproductive rights. From what I have seen when it comes to these detransitioners, from my understanding in terms of the statistics, trans people are 8% of the population, and then the detransitioners are somewhere from 1 to 8% as well. So all of these laws, so to a degree, yes, we are guinea pigs in the shot in the dark, but
you do have things where you have people who are transgender who are doing blind polls. Those are actually skewed a little bit because people don't, but that can occur. So maybe you might find 8% if you took maybe a blind poll, but the blind poll isn't really the most accurate. But anyway.
Just like in the 80s when AZT was being discovered, or 90s when it was being discovered, those folks had to go through that process, and I was given informed consent and understood that when I signed that.
We just don't know, because the studies aren't there, like you said, right? So the problem is when you talk about the detransition rate, what generally happens is there's no follow-up. The longest study that's been done is 5 years out. The average detransition happens between 4 and 10 years. So we're not capturing all of that. Plus, if you haven't had your primary sex organs removed, you literally just stop taking hormones, and then you never go see your doctor again. And so they never follow up, and you just fall off the rolls. So the stats on detransition is completely false.
That's actually a pretty good point as well. And also, hold on.
I'm going to say something. First of all, I want to empathize with everyone here when it comes to healthcare system, because it's not always for us. I don't think that doctors are manipulating trans care. I think they're still learning about trans care. And to your point, there is not a lot of research because the research is still new and fresh. You know, detransitioning is a thing, but truth be told, detransitioning is actually rare when it comes to not just wanting to be trans anymore. Now, the underlying factors within that
The fucking facial expressions from you, Ron.
is healthcare conditions, which I actually heard a trans man who is famous talk about, you know, very well. I agree with what y'all were saying because these issues are very, very real, but also I think it's really because doctors are still learning about our experience.
For a community that is 1% or less of the general population, we can never seem to find it within ourselves to find empathy for, even if it is the 1% of our community, which is detransitioners, and for the horrific medical malpractice, abuse, mental and spiritual turmoil they go through. It's like, so we want the rest of the world to say this 1% matters, but our 1% doesn't matter. That's the first thing.
Right. 1% of 1%. The thing is, there actually is a smaller number of detransitioners within trans people than there are trans people within general population.
The second thing is, it's not as if they detransition.
Okay, I get it there. I do actually think a lot of people do empathize with detransitioners. The only time when people don't empathize with detransitioners is when they start to weaponize their experience and they say, like, I wasn't trans, and this is what happens when you put a girl on testosterone and stuff like that. When they say bullshit like that, when they start buzzwords and all this bullshit just to fearmonger an audience again to control them and to say, hey, this is what happens.
Yeah, at that point it feels like, are you really, maybe you're not really a teacher, and you're more like somebody who maybe had a different sort of...
Happened to me, so it's probably happening to you too, and your children, so just keep an eye out for that. It didn't work out for me, so it's probably not going to work out for you. When there's a detransitioner who actually shares their experience and says, this is what happened for me, I thought it was right for me, and it wasn't, and I'm just trying to help anybody out there who might have the same experiences as me, and hopefully you don't have to go through what I went through, and that's why I'm sharing my story. Those detransitioners I feel like they're very, very, very overlooked because they aren't extremists, and there are a lot of extremist detransitioners out there who fearmonger people, like I said, and those are the ones who get praised. And as Blair's saying, like, we kind of just say, oh, well, they're just the 1%, or we just don't care about them, or something like that. I think the reason that the LGBT community feels that way is because of the way that those scenarios are shown or shared. When it comes to someone genuinely sharing their detransition experience and coming from an actual place of concern and not trying to scare people, that's where I think a lot of empathy, and not that you like pity that person, but you know that sucks that they had to go through that. I want to hear her second point though.
It's not as if they detransition because of, just like you said, the loosening of all the restrictions to get on these drugs. It's like, that's not a good thing. Gatekeeping is a good thing. Like making sure the right people are getting on these drugs so there aren't regret cases, there aren't botched cases. That's what we have to go towards, because right now we're going down the slippery slope.
She just said gatekeeping is a good thing. I know that.
That's
know that this is a point that people try to make, and I get where Blair is coming from. Let's try to make sure that there isn't this. But people have gone through all those loopholes and have thought that this was the right thing for them, and have gotten cleared and gotten this, and have lived for whatever gender for 8 years, and this was right for them, and they checked off everything off of that list. But at the end of the day, they still detransitioned. There is no way to be 100% good 100% of the time. We can use this for examples with cosmetic surgeries on the face. You can't, that's something somebody wants to do, and they're going to do it. Let's just say you want lip injections. You end up liking it, and you do it, and you keep getting it for 5 years or something like that. And then 5 years down the line, you're like, this wasn't really for me. You know, I checked off everything on the list that I wanted this, but it's not really for me, and I hate it, and I don't like the way it looks. I don't know how lip injections work. Don't they go away after a little bit? They do, right? But you get it after you have too many, they look fucked up or something. I don't know. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is we can't be right 100% of the time. And I know that, but I think we should try our best to almost be that way 100% of the time. But people are human beings, and they are going to mistake something for gender dysphoria. And as I have studied in most of my things for my videos about detrans, because I've made quite a few, more than 50% of reasons of detransition, I think it's even higher than that. I don't have the stats on hand. I can show it on screen. Is not because they don't have gender dysphoria. It is society, it's money, it's not passing, it's screen.
Yeah, transition didn't reflect the complexity of their identity. That's the main one. Yeah.
It's not because they don't have gender dysphoria. It is society, it's money, it's not passing, it's losing your family and friends or some shit like that, or difficulty getting a job. There are so many different reasons, and it's just not because they don't have gender dysphoria.
Anyone can get on it. Every single person here, I'm pretty sure, just stated that they went in and walked out in an hour or less to get their hormones, and that's a huge problem, especially a child.
Because of things that...
But yes, I think that is an issue as well.
To your point about gaining research, how do you expect the medical community to gain access to research if we're just preventing these folks to actually go through any of the processes to learn the scientific method of what is happening?
From what I've seen, that the access to it does not happen.
happening, just like with AZT drugs, where we learned that that was actually harming us, and now we have things like Biktarvy.
Yeah, so it's the same way as we have with any research. You have a very select, very heavy gatekeeping crew that you're allowed to, create these studies around. And you need a good checklist to be like, these people show all the actual signs of gender dysphoria. They are having like very strong distress. And every state that's passed bans on access for minors also has provisions, except for in the most extreme cases, to conduct studies on.
Okay, very
Florida.
Very interesting. I fucking forget what I wanted to say. I don't think that we should disallow young children to not be able to transition just because there's not enough studies.
Yeah. There's going to be puberty blockers are
enough studies where we can be like, hey, this is good, or hey, this isn't good. But as far as being a child and transitioning, let's just say 5 years old, all they're doing is cutting their clothes and having a nickname and dressing in different clothes. They already say that, and that's what it is. And if that continues until they're 10, 11, 12, then you start to talk about puberty blockers and then the risks of that and stuff like that. But if it's continued from age 5 to 10 into 12, that's still that's a very long time, and that is pretty much checking everything off the list. And kids are given the puberty blockers, though there are goods and bads of it. The puberty blockers are there to wait that puberty out. Let's just say a year, to see if that kid still wants to move on with the transition. Because if they do, then they can start talking about hormones and doing all that stuff. It's almost like kind of like a stop. But there's lots of controversy around puberty blockers. Hey, if you're gonna put something in your body, it causes shit. All medications do. So even the Tylenol you're taking for your headache when you're hungover tomorrow or watching this video.
Gender affirming transition.
I will say though, like some people don't have puberty until later in life is irregular, but people do. So like it's like.
Is suicide prevention.
I mean, that is such a stupid fucking question. I don't even know why they ask this question, because absolutely it can be, but at the same time, you can still be so depressed after transitioning still. I'm just gonna say, basically, sort of, kind of.
Well, look, the thing is though, right? It's like, imagine you've got a list of reasons why you are super, super, super depressed. And there's like bullying, oppression, and then there's all these things. And on one of the lists is you don't feel you have gender dysphoria, basically. Some the point I didn't make up. And you can address that point, but obviously that's not going to make you not depressed, because there's a bunch of other things. But it is going to take strain off of and tick one thing off the list. That thing is no longer there, causing that. Other things are, but that thing is not.
Not really. I don't know. I just said yes and then sort of and then no.
Like it is yes, but also
I'm in the middle. I don't have a clear answer for that.
I mean, it's a known thing that trans youth are at greater risk of suicide and just suicidal ideations. And so I know there are a lot of kids in a lot of pain, and growing up as a trans kid, I was in so much pain, and I feel like I could have been spared of a lot of that and gotten to enjoy my life a lot more if I had earlier access to gender affirming care. And even the gender affirming care that I did receive later in my life, and I went on hormones when I was like 16 and I got top surgery at 17, that completely changed my life in the most dramatic way. And so yeah, I think it is life-saving care, and I think a lot of trans people would agree.
It dealt with a lot of those thoughts because of being trans and feeling different and not knowing what to do about it. And there was a point in my life where I had to come out to my mom, and if I was unable to get the care for that, I could not live the way that I was anymore. My quality of life internally was fucking awful, and I'm very, very good at hiding things, so I hid everything as much as I could until I couldn't anymore. And if I was unable and my mom was not accepting, I would not be sitting here at this desk today. I just still think being a trans person is very taxing mentally, regardless of how many surgeries you have. For me personally, it just doesn't matter.
I've chosen to not medically transition in my bottom half, let's put it that way. And this is the first time I'm actually saying this aloud, but I am having facial feminization surgery. And that was, let's put it that way. And this is the first time I'm actually saying this aloud, but I am having facial feminization surgery. And that was an incredibly, ridiculously difficult journey. I still had to go through so many hoops, and I was still denied by insurance. And in my own personal life, I've also struggled quite a bit with mental health. And, a lot of that really relates to certain parts of my body. Like I always hated my body when I was younger, and I didn't understand why. And, and I was always dressing, as like a cis male, and I just had all this stuff just didn't fit. It just didn't feel right, and it was just like this darkness in my life. Like I just wanted it, gone. And I just learned to live with it. But then eventually, like, figure out who I am and all that. Like now I know, like, this is life-saving care. Like this for me is life-saving care. Like who knows where I could be in a few years had I not known who I am and had access to care.
I think too often we hear, that if we don't affirm our child's, gender identity that's different than their sex, then they're going to commit suicide. We hear this all the time, especially from the detransition community whose parents were told this and it was manipulative. We hear politicians say this all the time when they're trying to, stop bills or pass bills. The problem with that is that's the same line that abusers use.
I get that. I get it. It's just like...
Sorry, one thing.
Different than their sex. Here,
Back to the start. Sorry.
Known who I am and had access to care.
I think too often we hear, that if we don't affirm our child's, gender identity that's different than their sex, then they're going to commit suicide. We hear this all the time, especially from the detransition community whose parents were told this and it was manipulative. We hear politicians say this all the time when they're trying to, stop bills or pass bills. The problem with that is that's the same line that abusers use.
I get that. I get it.
What?
It's just like, but it can also be the reality of it because it was for me. I almost practically had to say, if you don't let me do this, I will K-word myself, which is fucking abusive. I feel like I've had people say, if you don't do this on a different scale, I'm gonna K myself. That is a fucking abusive terminology, but it was true. I actually meant it. I wasn't using it to manipulate. It wasn't used to manipulate. It was like, well, you can either like help me through this, or
And even if you don't, I can.
Don't help me through this. I didn't use it to control a person's behavior. I just wanted to live as how I wanted to live, and that was actually the reality of it. And it can be for many other trans people, but I don't think that is the wording that should be used.
When it comes to gender affirming care, I appreciate everything that gender affirming care has done for me. And I thank God every day that this was the right decision for me, because I have friends like Richie who it wasn't the right decision for, and now he's missing genitals. So, when it comes to it being life-saving.
Right, but that was Richie's decision.
There's a little thing called a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And sometimes when we create a narrative, it can kind of take on a life of its own. So I know there's a lot of talk about suicide statistics in the trans community. And interestingly, almost all of those statistics come out of LGBT activist organizations.
This is fact untrue, and the amount of rebuttal that found against the player's point would take longer to go over than the length of this entire video. Let's try and Google it and see.
Who have an incentive to put those numbers out to portray this image that we are suffering greatly, we're under attack, and then all of those suicide rates are due to societal mistreatment.
Which is more likely, that in a society that is objectively anti-LGBTQ+, like I've discussed before, even if homophobia, transphobia, and all those things, it was in a minority, because of how brutal you have it, it doesn't really matter. Like, let's take a classroom. Imagine a classroom has 20 pupils in it, and 5 of them are deeply bullying the one kid is trans and one kid is let's say gay. And they bully the 2 kids. Now all the other kids, all the other, in this case be 12 kids, all the other 12 kids, they don't mind. They don't mind those people. But the thing is, those 5 people are going to make those 2 people's lives a living hell, to use that term. And that's the key point. So, we know we have that world. So, which do you think is more likely? That the people who are supporters of these people want to help them not die because of bullying and depression and all this? Or is it what you're saying?
And when these kids are being told, like you said, when they're going into these doctors, the doctors are telling their parents essentially emotional blackmail. They're saying trans.
I don't know how true that is and if that actually happens and how many doctors have said that to parents. I've heard it a bit, but I've not really seen it be a phenomenon.
Your kid or your kid's gonna die, and they say it in front of the child.
No, they would be saying and they probably wouldn't be saying in front of the child. There's a potential of the child, having suicidal thoughts.
And they set up this false dichotomy as if those are the only 2 options moving forward. And here to tell any child feeling any type of way, those are not your only 2 options. In fact, there is a vast array of options in between and around suicide and transition. Therapists and doctors aren't even legally allowed to say, no, you're not trans, you're actually experiencing A, B, or C.
That is simply not even a fact.
And that's the case with detrans people as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, a doctor can sit you down and say, like, well, you're not showing symptoms of depression or gender dysphoria based off of, our visits and stuff like that. They can say that.
They have this huge host of issues: depression, body dysmorphia, anorexia, eating disorders, maybe sexual abuse in their past. People don't know that a long observed symptom of sexual abuse is wanting to be the other gender to cope with it.
That was actually a common thing that I saw, and these are just we are just talking, that there's no fucking facts here, but this is something common that I saw amongst detransitioners when I was researching. It was due to sexual trauma and stuff like that, because they feel so disgusting in that body that they were essayed as and were a victim as, so they transition to cope with that because they feel like they can protect themselves in this shell that they have of themselves. I've seen that, so that I do know that is a thing.
I just think it's a false dichotomy that it's either
the murder rate also goes up, but anyway.
Death or transition. But with that said, I agree with you. I appreciate everything that transition's done for me, but it's too much of a roll of the dice, and I think it's unhealthy telling people, do it or you're gonna die.
Well, I agree, but I also feel like this is a conservative talking point where it's not happening enough that it's actually an issue. Like I said, I haven't heard enough about it being a phenomenon where doctors are saying, you need to transition your kid or he's going to die. If it was that big of an issue, I feel like it would just be talked about more, and the doctors would be a lot more, what's the word for it?
Also, one thing. So, are you arguing it would be better? Are you like, is it arguing that someone who's been sexually assaulted wouldn't commit suicide? That's just not true.
Scorned for that, and of course there is more than an option of transition or KYS, right? If you are thinking of these two things and they're both in your head and you don't know what to do, but you feel like a transitioning is going to rush you, but then you feel like suicidal. I'm trying not to try not to trigger people, and I'm trying not to get demonetized. You can take your time. Everything, and every time I make a video, every single time I say this, it's
the Hostinger Black Friday sale. Managed WordPress hosting now from only $249 a month. Get epic savings for a limited time only with free
is better than others. So
take your time. If you think that transitioning isn't right for you, please take your time. Google your shit. Talk to therapists. Go to doctors. Talk to other trans people. Watch videos. Read books. Take your time. It's not this or that. It's never this or that.
Agree to disagree, but the research has not been completely fulfilled yet, because a lot of these people don't even know about our experience, and that is why it's important that we make it very clear what we need to do.
There's also, speaking of the numbers that come out of LGBT activism.
True. I mean, I haven't been part of any numbers of anything. I mean, I don't think I was. I was never like questionnaire at the doctor's office or something about my trans experience, like even regarding this question and other questions.
You get what you would get are polls. So polls and you take from a proportion of data. So you're not asking every single person. It's not a census of trans people. It's, proportion. Yeah, there's all sorts of different levels.
Organizations, there was a little number that the life expectancy of a trans woman was 35. That was rescinded a couple years ago after like over a decade of that being like just factually, shared. And I always thought that my life was statistically going to end at 35. So, but those numbers were based on by those organizations.
No, that would be more likely to be an average calculated based off of the way you calculate the ordinary average of an age, and applying that to trans people, and because of the high rate of suicide, and that leads to, and of course hate crimes as well, that leads to people dying young. But if you aren't going to be committing suicide, then that shouldn't be a problem.
Prostitute deaths. So it's not always the most reputable numbers they're getting, you know what I mean? And these activist organizations are political too. We get caught up in calling them activists, and we think it's this emotional, spiritual thing, but they are political organizations.
There are a lot of political organizations. This is why it's very, very, you need to take your research.
No offense, but like you are actively like.
You really need to really research it. When I'm doing my research, I know reputable sources, because there are places that are political, and you don't know there is giant websites that are just databases full of resources and studies from authors that we don't even know if it's true or where it was taken from or what else was also in those statistics. So it's always like, it just makes it difficult. But at the same time, then like I actually don't know what they're talking about, so I can't really like speak for it myself. And I don't feel like looking it up because I've been filming for like a couple of hours. And anyways, yeah, you need to make sure that when you are looking into these things, it is what it says it is, or it's representing what it says it's representing, because there is a lot of misinformation absolutely everywhere. This video being one of them also.
So I'm an activist, and so a lot of what you're talking about really was focused more on Black trans women, because Black trans women do not live past the age of 35, because oftentimes it is our
That is the statistic I saw as well, was Black trans women.
group within the trans community that is often murdered, we're often harassed, we're often discriminated against, and so a lot more of that focus has had to be around Black, brown, indigenous folks, because oftentimes the research goes missing for us.
They sourced from prostitutes, though. That was the source of
But see, the thing is, though, even when we talk about prostitutes, indigenous folks, because oftentimes the research goes missing for us.
They sourced from prostitutes, though. That was the source of
But see, the thing is, though, even when we talk about prostitutes, trans women have to sometimes participate in sex work to survive.
But they base it off cis prostitutes. Sorry, I'm done. It was
Sorry, what?
So from what I understand,
what are they talking about? I don't even want to go back. I'm not seeing anything where Blair talked about prostitutes. Sorry, I was doing a little bit of research, but the only thing I could find that said anything about this statistic was the 19thnews.org, which is a nonprofit in Texas, and they only basically said like experts said blah blah blah, so they're not sure where they got the statistic. Anyways, I mean, we can all agree that trans women, I don't even have to look at statistics to guess this, but trans women are probably murdered more, and that's probably even higher for any trans woman of any race that isn't white as well. I don't know. Anyways, I was just trying to see what Blair was talking about. I didn't see anything about prostitutes, and that was the only article I could find about that. And then there was like Reddit.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense from a perspective. I think this thing is it's and the way he calculated averages.
But apparently it was debunked that it wasn't 35. I don't know.
A lot of that focus has always been around black trans women because we do not get to see the age of 35. You are in a place, when I say privilege, you're in a place of privilege where you do not have to worry about the harassment and the discrimination that I face. I face as a black person. I face as a black person. I'm not going to say that you do not experience harassment or discrimination. That's not what I'm saying because, like you said, you're a person of nuance. And so follow me here. When I come as a person of color, as a black trans woman, you and I do not get to have that same experience. There are more rooms that you get to walk in that I will be forbidden in. And one thing about it is that's why it's important. Like someone like me has to create her own space to be able to counteract what you're doing. And I'm not saying that you don't. But what I'm saying here is what I'm trying to get you.
She isn't saying that she doesn't. It's just I know what she's saying. Like if she's gonna be more discriminated against as a black trans woman than a white trans man, or even if it was a white trans woman. I don't know if Blair's white. I think she's like, isn't she like Latina or something? She is fucking Latina. Look at me, I'm fucking smart. She's half Irish. I'm half Irish.
For fuck's sake. Why are all the worst people in the world fucking
Irish? Are we related? Oh my god, we're probably like very, very distant relatives.
My blackness?
I mean, I don't know though. Like when people say, okay, I'm not saying you're not Irish. I'm saying, heritage-wise, a lot of people say they're Irish in heritage, but like, when you say half, do you mean like half as in on one of your parents' sides, they have Irish heritage, or do you mean like one of your parents was Irish? Because I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying that Americans
should not have to pay for your whiteness. That is destroying
your community.
So you're gonna tell all of my
How are you gonna say that and then that's the end?
What you're talking about too is not
shit. Okay.
I enjoyed this.
Okay, that was the end. Let's see what the
debate
end is.
for what it was. It was quite ugly at certain points, and I wish that it was all trans. On the panel because that would have been more appropriate and more fitting.
That is like such a prickish thing to say.
You're so offensive. You're an offensive person, human being.
Okay. Well, I find a lot of things over here offensive as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, don't fucking enter Ireland.
And I have to. Trust me, the feeling is more than mutual. But I will say.
I'm glad that we're watching till the end because you don't have to have the snarky comments. Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that you get to dictate something.
It was very enlightening, and I hope to be back at Jubilee soon.
Blair White flew out to do Jubilee, by the way. Because I don't think she doesn't live in LA anymore.
I think this was interesting.
Right? What?
I hope to be back at Jubilee soon.
Blair White flew out to do Jubilee, by the way. Because I don't think she doesn't live in LA anymore.
I think this was interesting. Obviously, I don't think we have a lot of common ground on a lot of things, but I think we found some. I think what most conservatives in general believe is as an adult, you can do what you want with your body. I talk to conservatives all the time. We don't allow...
Yeah, that's not really great, though, is it? Because they don't believe that. It's like, you do what you want with your body, except if it's, getting an abortion, getting surgery, getting this, getting healthcare if you don't have the money. So you do what you want with your body as long as it's something we are okay with.
Children to make decisions for themselves on a wide range of issues, and that's why we don't let them, mutilate their bodies. I mean, it was...
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was educational and enlightening. I got to learn a lot, and it's nice meeting all of you.
I like hearing the different perspectives, and I feel like even though I'm definitely in my beliefs, I understand where things come from, I just do not agree saying that everybody on this panel is not trans. I think it's bullshit, and I think you're trans and you're a part of my community.
Thank you.
Yep.
I really appreciate
Sasha! Fucking tell her, dude.
All y'all, I love the We don't have to agree with each other, but these conversations need to continue happening because they're not happening anywhere else. And so until we're all...
And I wish we could have these conversations without snarkiness or anger or anything like that. They know what they're doing. Jubilee knows what they're doing. That's why they don't ever have me on the show. If we could just have these conversations and not act like children and baboons about it, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
All creating more platforms around this for ourselves so other people can understand, then, let's keep at it.
I mean, honestly, regardless of my interaction with Blair here today, we are all, for the most part, I think, mostly in an echo chamber in our own lives. So it's nice, actually, to be in front of all these people, especially the ones who don't see the things the way I do, because it also opens my eyes to see, maybe I could rethink X, Y, Z, or maybe there's something...
I mean, Jubilee does have, I don't like them, actually, to be clear, but they do have some non-American stuff. But I think they really do need to bring in people who aren't American, because in these cases, America is a brain-broken country. You've got people who are like, I'm a conservative. It's like, wow, you're arguing for this exact same thing as a fascist would. You're not a complete fascist, to be clear, but wow, you're pretty damn close. And you say you're a conservative, eh?
Thing I learned today, I'm not closed off to learning something new or to changing my mind, because I've done that before and I can do that again and I will evolve as a human being.
All I have to say to the general public is start thinking of reasons why you supported doing this to kids.
And
What?
to that point,
Okay, I don't even know what the fuck that even means. You were a kid when you transitioned, and you're fucking happy about it. So it's like, I got mine, fuck you. Okay.
Yeah.
Point. It's just I'm hoping that folks will be able to understand why the activism is there and what it is, because generally there may be mistakes made in that light, but at the end of the day, we are, as trans people, trying to gain access to society in a healthy, safe way, and also see a future for ourselves, which is something that I never had access to with the way that I grew up in a lot of that ideology of not being allowed to do things when I was 18, even though I knew exactly.
So that's everything I have for today. I mean, I agreed with both sides on different things. It just depends. But yeah, that was kind of brutal, though. That was pretty fucking brutal. I love reacting to the trans videos that Jubilee puts out. So if you guys do want to see me do another reaction to them, go ahead for sure. Let me know if you want me to be on Jubilee. Maybe we can figure out a way for that to happen. Happy October. I will see you very soon.
Yeah.
Very, very soon.
Oh, jeez. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, so...
Is HelloFresh worth the price? Absolutely.
My God.
I just love the idea of having my meals planned and food shopping taken care of.
I just love when my food shopping is planned for me. The way they describe it is like a prison. But anyway, yeah, so at the end of the day, a few points there. I will say go ahead and check out some for fuck's sake, their channel in the description. Here's some videos there for you to go ahead and watch. And yeah, there we are. Some good videos. Few bad points from people within the panel. Mostly, good points though from those in the